To appeal any recommendation of the Commission, our appeals cards are to our right. If you wish to speak in front of the Commission, we would ask that you fill out a speaker's card, provide it to our staff, who will give it to our secretary. Each side will be given 10 minutes to present their case, with 5 minutes for rebuttal. And lastly, at the end of each case, if you wish to discuss it any further, we would ask that you leave the building, because if you go back into the lobby area, it does echo into the chamber. This time I would ask you to stand with an invocation from Commissioner Casabon, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by Commissioner Willie.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Commissioners, in our package, we have the minutes from the August 2nd, 2016 zoning meeting. I would ask for you to review them, and I will entertain any motions. Commissioner Dougherty.
Mr. Chairman, I've reviewed them and see nothing wrong with adopting as presented.
Motion by Commissioner Dougherty to adopt. We have a second. Commissioner Richardson, seconds. Any further comments? Please vote. Motion carries. Staff, are there any cases you wish postponed? None. This is a public hearing. The public is encouraged to speak on behalf of or against any case before the Commission. Zoning change request cases. Applications for proposed change of zoning district or amendments to the land use ordinance requiring review or recommendation of approval by the Zoning Commission before action by the Parish Council are as follows. 2016-294-ZC, existing zoning A1 Suburban District, proposed zoning A2 Suburban District. The parcel 89.5501 acres. The petitioner, Jeffrey D. Shine. The owner, Archdiocese of New Orleans, John L. Echold. The parcel is located on the north side of Sharp Road, east of Westwood Drive, Ward 4, District 5. Postponed from our August 2nd, 2016 meeting. Staff?
Mr. Chairman, if I may suggest, we'd like to hear 2016-294 and 295 at the same time, if possible, considering that it's for the same parcel of land.
I'll make a recommendation to join both cases.
We have a recommendation to do so. Those are decisions with the advice of the commissioners that the chair will make, and I concur with advice from the commission. Mr. Shane, would you like that as well, as the petitioner, to have both cases? Thank you. The second case, then, we'll hear together, but we will vote on separately. I think that's a fair request, and given the magnitude of these two cases, I'll defer to the Commission, but I'm pretty confident that we'll have good discussion on these. 2016-295-ZC, existing zoning A1 Suburban District and A2 Suburban District, proposed zoning A2 Suburban District and planned unit development overlay. The parcel, 104.17 acres. The petitioner, Jeffrey D. Shane. The owner, Archdiocese of New Orleans, John D. Echold. The parcel is located on the north side of Sharp Road, east of Westwood Drive, Ward 4, District 5. This case was also postponed from the August 2nd, 2016 meeting. Staff?
The request consists of a zoning change of an 89.55 acre portion of a 104 acre parcel to be rezoned from A1 to A2 Suburban to make it an A2 Suburban District parcel of 104 acres to be rezoned to planning and development to develop a 103 lots, single-family residential subdivision. As you can see, if you have a copy of the staff report in front of you, this proposed zoning change is for 36 single-family residential units of 90 to 100 feet in width, 17 units of 60 to 65 feet in width, and 50 garden homes. And this proposed subdivision is supposed to be accessed from Sharp Road through a boulevard-type entrance. And at this time, staff would like to recommend approval of the requested zoning change to A2 and to the Planning and Development District.
Thank you. Mr. Shane.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Honorable Commission. My name is Jeff Shane. I'm with the Jones Cassell Law Firm at P.O. Box 1810 in Covington, and I will be handling these cases this evening before you. The property is owned by the Archdiocese of New Orleans, and the proposed purchaser of the property and development of this tract is Land Holding LLC, also known as Brentwood Estates. I have submitted to you this evening a copy of a letter previously sent that also includes the proposed PUD plan, and I would like to go through some highlights with you at this time. This project concerns the southerly portion of a tract that's been owned by the Archdiocese for many years that has access to Sharp Road. In particular, it consists of 104 acres, 89 of which are currently zoned A1. The southerly 15 acres that abut Sharp Road are actually zoned A2 at this time. So the first case on your agenda seeks a rezoning of the 89 A1 acres to A2. And the second case on your agenda suggests that all 104 acres be considered as per the PUD plan, so that if you make positive recommendations this evening, as staff report suggests, or recommends, I should say, this tract would be rezoned A2 with a PUD, and that's what would go to the council for their consideration. As you know, the issues before the Zoning Commission this evening are restricted in a literal sense to land use, the appropriateness of the proposed zones that are being sought. And that usually gets down to the type of use and also the density. The type of use is unchanged in both requests, in that the property is currently zoned single-family residential, and the proposal suggests that it continue to be used only as single-family residential. Furthermore, though, the density issue is addressed through this request, in that the proposed A2 underlying zoning would allow a maximum of 1 unit per acre. So of the 104 acres that are sought to be developed as Brentwood Estates, there are projected 103 units or lots as shown on the PUD plan. I think you would find it interesting that the density calculation is 0.99 units per acre. I'm not suggesting that there's anything special about 0.99 as opposed to 1 unit per acre, but what I would suggest is important is that staff has previously calculated the density of surrounding subdivisions in the Sharp Road corridor. And in the somewhat immediate area, that density suggests 1.36 units per acre in those other subdivisions. Now, my client went beyond that and took a look at the 450-acre developed region and found that there were approximately 900 lots, which would suggest a density of 2 units per acre. The point is simply this. As to land use, the request we make is the same. As to density, the request of 0.99 units per acre is considerably less than the calculation that staff compiled of 1.36 units per acre, and obviously is slightly less than half of the 2 units per acre that my client calculated over the 450 acres in what I will call the general Sharp Road area. I think all of you are aware that these cases actually had the benefit of 2 community meetings in this chamber, for which some of you attended, and which many residents appeared and, of course, expressed their thoughts, their feelings, their concerns, etc. Based on that, we believe that the product that we bring to the Commission this evening is not only code compliant, but we have proposed to you compelling reasons why you should recommend the changes that we've requested to both A2 and PUD. If I could, I would like to emphasize a few comments that staff made in its reports, and in particular as to the first case where we're seeking A2, staff specifically tells us that the 2025 future land use plan calls for the area to be developed as a planned district with single-family residential uses, including conservation areas. Staff has no objection to the request, considering that the site directly abuts an A2 suburban zoning on the south and east sides and A4 on the west side. And as to conservation, the PUD plan shows you a green area that consists approximately 66% of this site will be preserved as open or green space pursuant to the PUD. The zoning staff report as to the PUD request also aptly notes that the proposed development meets the objectives of the 2025 future land use plan by providing a residential development at density similar to the adjacent uses. The design of the subdivision also allows to achieve the conservation criteria of the 2025 future land use plan by preserving the existing wetlands located on site. And in that regard, I would implore you to look at the PUD plan, and you will see that the areas that are not only green but have the diagonal lines through them are the wetlands area, and you will see that my client has carefully attempted to suggest development only in the non-wet areas, but for some very small areas where the drive or the road runs through the subdivision. So in that regard, we believe that this PUD is a model residential PUD in that it provides diversity, different size and shape of lots. It provides an extreme amount of conservation or green area. It does not invade into development of the wetlands areas, and it's clearly consistent and in fact less than the density of not only the subdivisions that immediately abound it, but also the subdivisions that you find throughout the Sharp Road corridor. Now let's talk a little bit about the homes that we envision being developed on this PUD plan. And if you'll look at the PUD plan with me, you will see that the area to the right or the east, which is the color brown, there will be 50 garden homes that will be on sites of approximately 45 by 65 feet. And we project that the value of these products, meaning lot and finished home, to be between $325,000 and $350,000. And those will be 2,000 square foot garden homes plus or minus. If you look at the tan or beige area where there are 17 units somewhat in the center of the development, those will have approximate 2,200 square foot homes. They will run in the $350,000 to $400,000 range. That's lot and improvement. And you'll see that those lots have fronts that vary between 60 and 65 feet. Finally, you will see that the 36 estate-size lots near Sharp Road to the west or left-hand side of the PUD plan, those lots have 90 to 100-foot fronts. Those packages, land and improvements, will run between $400,000 and $450,000. And again, this will provide, we think, some excellent home opportunities for people that move into the area. Now, with this PUD submission, we elected or opted to also file a traffic impact analysis at this time so that it could be reviewed by your traffic engineer and engineering department. Typically, you do not see traffic data or traffic issues until we go into the planning commission or the planning process. I want you to know that our traffic impact analysis study was submitted to the Parish Engineering Department in June. It was reviewed, and it has in fact been approved. And essentially, the report states that there are no significant impacts that require any form of mitigation as a result of this proposed 103-lot subdivision. Now, with regard to drainage, an issue that's very important to all of us, both developer, landowner, and certainly those that live in the area, that data is typically not provided to you until the case comes to you for preliminary subdivision review and when you are sitting as a planning commission. We are working on the drainage report and in fact hope to have it submitted to the parish in the weeks to come. We recognize that as this case proceeds, whether we are successful this evening or not, that everyone is going to want to see good hard answers with regard to the drainage issue. But I know that you as commissioners understand that drainage technically is not an issue that is a part of the zoning application or deliberation this evening. At least in my view, it is not part of the criteria. And it's one that, again, is a subdivision matter that would come to you at a later date when we come through the Planning Commission process. There are also matters such as types of streets, block lengths, cul-de-sacs, central sewerage and water, and other infrastructure issues which have been discussed at the community meetings, but again are things that typically are engineering items and items that you would see during the preliminary subdivision review process. So some of that data might have been included on the PUD plan as it relates to cul-de-sacs, typical profiles, things of that nature, but most of the heavy lifting or the detailed data is data that you will not see again until we get into the Planning Commission process. And I think, as you know, but hopefully the public understands, it's because the system is set up such that until the Commission and Council have made a determination as to whether or not the zoning request is appropriate, the developer is not asked to spend the considerable sums of money and time to prepare the detailed studies that need to be made in order to submit the project to the Planning Commission for subdivision review. In summary, I would like to leave a couple of thoughts with you. This property has been owned by the Archdiocese for many years. It has been suggested that there have been, suggested by residents at the community meetings, that there have been agreements or covenants or some forms of contract that prohibit this property from being rezoned. We have suggested that that is not the case, that the only contract, if you will, is a cooperative endeavor agreement that the Archdiocese entered into with St. Tammany Parish in 2013, but there is nothing in that agreement that prohibits this tract from being rezoned and being considered for the type of project that we have presented to you this evening. There is one thing in that agreement, though, that is important that has been carried forward in this PUD plan, and that is a requirement that there be a no-cut buffer 50 feet wide along Sharp Road, which you will see on the plan, and also a 100-foot wide no-cut buffer inside the western boundary abutting Westwood Estates, which you will see on the plan. And to the extent that some might suggest that the proposed detention pond is within that 100 feet of Westwood Estates, let me assure you that when you get the engineered survey in the planning process, there will be no improvements within that 100-foot no-cut area. These ponds were shown simply by way of concept and proposed location. The engineering has not been done yet to tell us exactly how many ponds, what depth, what size, and where they would be precisely located, but these are certainly our educated guess. The point I'm making is that we certainly intend and will honor the covenants made in the Cooperative Endeavor Agreement as it relates to the no-cut setback of 100 feet next to Westwood and of 50 feet along Sharp Road. Last and not least, I hope that you believe that the central issue before you this evening is that are there compelling reasons to allow the same type of use, single-family residential, at this location at a proposed density that in my view is very modest when compared to the densities of the very nice but many existing subdivisions along Sharp Road. I think the figures or the history suggest to us that this subdivision should have a place on Sharp Road, and that we should have an opportunity to go forward and present the detailed engineering work that a planning commission would require to see if, in fact, drainage and other impacts can be properly handled and dealt with, so that this will not be an encumbrance or hardship on any of the neighborhoods. I don't know how much, if any, time I may have remaining, but if I do, I will reserve it for rebuttal and ask, of course, for the same allotment of time that the others might receive. Thank you.
You're welcome, Mr. Shane. You have about 6 minutes remaining on the 20. Is there anyone else in the public who wishes to speak in favor of this case? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition? Your spokespeople, Joe, why don't you begin?
Good evening. I'm Joe Limeculer, president of Century Oaks Subdivision. You have my written comments in front of you. You also have a longer document that contains more justification for the comments I'm about to make. Based on the flooding due to the adjacent development, we are seriously concerned the current protocol will not properly address flooding-related health safety risks in the Bayou Tetlour's watershed. For watersheds in this stage of development, waiting until the subdivision approval process to address the flooding risk does not work and has not worked for Century Oaks. When the Meadowbrook subdivision was approved, the drainage plan should have decreased the flow of water into Century Oaks. However, despite parish engineering review at the subdivision approval process, the opposite occurred. More water came into Century Oaks from Meadowbrook, and the western half of Century Oaks flooded for years. Eventually, one home was demolished, the lot was bought by the parish, and is now part of a $1.16 million remediation plan. In our view, this could have been avoided if the drainage review and flooding hazard mitigation was part of the rezoning approval. If millions of dollars are needed to address increased flooding due to this development in the watershed, who pays for the damages and the mitigation? The parish, using our tax dollars? The developer? I've lived in Century Oaks for over 15 years, and Sharp Road water backs up and floods my backyard multiple times a year. I knew of this risk when I purchased my home. I'll manage this risk as long as the land is developed as per the current zoning codes. Neither I nor any of my neighbors bordering this development are opposed to landowners developing their land according to current zoning and ordinances. We're not opposed to all development. We do not want to deny the landowner the right to develop their land. We just shouldn't have to take on the safety risks of higher density zoning for no discernible community benefit. I called the owner's representative and the developer and asked the question, why can't the land be developed as per the existing zoning? The reply from each was that a development would be uneconomic. So I ask you tonight, why should my neighbors and I be forced to take on additional risk to our safety and property due to a higher density zoning so others can profit? State Law Title 33, Section 107, and thus the UDC, states healthy, safe, and general welfare shall guide the administration of land use regulations. This is also contained in New Directions 2025, the St. Tammany Parish Comprehensive Plan, which is cited by the planning staff in their recommendation and is posted on your website. It encourages citizen reviews. When those reviews properly identify specific risks to public health, safety, the state law and 2025 clearly requires you to take those considerations into account now and not rely on a subsequent review process. And I think I've clearly pointed that out at the community meetings and the presentations I've developed of the hazards and the risks and the people that have been in danger. In closing, we're asking you to deny the zoning request and PUD application for this development until a formal drainage review covering the entire Bayou Tetlour's watershed is conducted. The review should be conducted by a professional engineer contracted by and reporting to the parish engineering staff. The state of the watershed, even with the recent improvements, is clearly under flooding stress. There are health and safety risks. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in opposition? Please come to the podium and state your name and address.
I am Tobin Eason. I reside at 128 Century Oaks, and I appreciate your time this evening. Mr. Shane made some remarks here that I want to address. Namely, there's a compelling reason, he stated, to allow for this PUD and the zoning change because the density is the same roughly and it's appropriate. But just like Joe said, the whole structure is not based on density and appropriateness. It's based on health and safety. That's your job, is to make sure that we're safe and that we're allowed to stay on our property without being flooded, okay? And so I sit here today, or stand here today, suggesting to you that we're not here to oppose it just to oppose it. We're not trying to be some exclusive area so that, say, no one can develop their property. We only ask that they be allowed to develop their property only if it's safe in the process of doing so. And the reason we're here today is because we're at a tipping point. We're at a point where, as Joe mentioned, and a lot of people here will tell you, we're at a place now that because of the Tetlures issue, Beauchamp, its development, that won't allow enough water to go through under the highway there, that this property can't be developed safely. We can see that a number of times when the flooding that's occurred over the years. We've seen it recently. And that's our concern, is that once this zoning change, if approved, is allowed to occur, we have a Pandora's box that's opened. Namely, I suspect there'll be trees that will be taken down. The issue about drainage and the like will be rubber stamped. It happened that way in Meadowbrook years ago that flooded Century Oaks and several people. In fact, the parish had to buy out a house in our subdivision. It cost the parish $1.1 million because the zoning plan and the drainage didn't account for excessive water into the area. Now, Mr. Shane mentioned traffic, and I'll tell you this, I went out and I personally sat at Sharp and Asbury, and I agree with Mr. Shane, it's not an issue there. However, he mentioned the CEA, and the traffic study mentions 59 in Sharp. That's a whole nother ball game. It refers to a roundabout that we checked and probably won't be funded for several years. We checked with the state. There's a backlog of, one gentleman said, with $12 billion before that roundabout will be on its agenda to build. That's several years away. And even the traffic study that they've utilized here acknowledges that there's a problem at that intersection. And roundabouts, in theory, are great, but they have to be introduced, they have to be implemented, they have to be funded, and they have to assume that there's no traffic problem on 59 or everything backs up. On 59 and Sharp, you got to have a flow of traffic, and everyone knows on I-12, the corridor at 59, that it's a disaster already. Forget school. If you come in from the west going east on I-12 into this area, you know it's already backed up. And this is not going to help, it's going to hurt. So that's our issue, is that because the introduction of this zoning request will add about 15% more housing along Sharp Road, we have a problem with. Now, Mr. Daigle, Mark Daigle, was going to be here tonight, and he couldn't make it, unfortunately, so I have some notes from him, and I'd like to pass this out to you. And our concern, as he mentions, that in the PUD statement proposed to the zoning board, the PUD yield plan, as per Unit Development Code Section 60103, is improperly calculated. So it didn't handle the calculations correctly. The plan is not correct since the developer did not include in the yield plan calculation layout the drainage features and location of wetlands as per ordinance requirements. So for him to submit the zoning request here, he had to fill out these forms appropriately. He didn't address the 3 waivers that are going to happen pertaining to the roadway in question concerning the cul-de-sac length, the block length, and the radius. He didn't address those issues in the PUD request. And then there's another form that was not filled out filled out properly. That was the environmental assessment data form. And there's 4 checkoff points that he did it inappropriately. So we're not asking, hey, God forbid, you can't ever approve this. All we're asking is that because we're at a tipping point, particularly to the issue of drainage, that protocol, it's not a contract, it's not etched in stone, that we reconsider the zoning in this at this time. Don't approve this, and let us go in and address these issues at this time before this Pandora box is opened. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am, if you state your name and address and be so kind to pull the microphone down to you so we can hear you. Thank you.
I know. We who are vertically challenged. My name is Marcia Davis. I reside at 801 Harmony in Westwood, and I'm speaking today on behalf of the residents of Westwood who stand to gain significant cut-through traffic as well as new drainage problems should Brentwood become a reality. As in many quiet neighborhoods, residents walk, run, bike, push their babies in strollers, and walk their dogs. The cut-through traffic would pose a safety risk, with the quiet Westwood Street becoming a busy thoroughfare. Drainage, as addressed by Mr. Limekiller, is a legitimate concern. Flooding is a possibility if Brentwood is developed, inasmuch as the water flow to Bayou Tet Lures proceeds through Westwood. During the recent round of heavy rains and flooding, the water rose to the level of the walkway of the bridge over the large ditch, which is a conduit for water to be directed to Bayou Tet Lures. This situation could only worsen with the dense development of Brentwood becoming a factor. Please consider the quality of life of Westwood residents as well as other residents of the Sharp Road corridor when you're casting your vote. And thank you for hearing our concerns.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Good evening. Sorry, Marcia. I am Ken Ress, 306 Lakeshore Drive, Audubon Lake Subdivision, 25-year resident of the parish, representing Sharp Road residents. We want to talk to you about the Brentwood Garden Home, the PUD part of this, and using the diagrams that we were given, knowing that they're conceptual, but you're basing decisions on those conceptual drawings also. We have visited numerous garden home developments in the area and find these major differences from the proposed development. None were located in an area that was already 90% developed with existing single-family developments like the Sharp Road corridor. None of them. Most have large tracts of undeveloped or commercial property surrounding the development, such that there is no conflict with the existing area. Brentwood will be in the backyard of several existing subdivisions and a church with a very active preschool program. With the minimal setbacks proposed, they will have a 35-foot wall of buildings to look at from their back door. All of the entrances to these other developments empty onto a main state road, 21, 1085, Louisiana 22. None emptied onto a 35-mile-an-hour, highly developed, single-family residential road with over 40 homes which face that roadway. It's their front yard. A cul-de-sac that is over 500% longer than the parish ordinance requirement of 700 feet and minimal driveway length for the vehicle parking. Meetings with fire officials indicate this type of development poses problems for emergency response vehicles. Why, if it was an issue in writing the ordinances, does it not pertain in this instance? Home buyers in these new areas know they are buying a home in a more closely developed environment when they make their purchase. Unlike Sharp Road, which was developed as larger lot, single-family homes consistent with the zoning for this area since its inception over 25 years. Most major home building has been completed for over 20 years. Home purchases were based on what was already built in our area and the existing surrounding zoning in place for over 25 years. Even before the comprehensive rezoning, this was A2 and A1. In conclusion, we do not oppose development We have not been involved in efforts to stop the other developments along Sharp Road over the past 20 years. We have no issue with the area being developed under the existing zoning of A1, A2. We do have a problem with the use of a shoehorn to jam as many houses as possible into this area in order to secure profit for the current landowner and developer. This feels like spot zoning. Unbridled growth is occurring in different areas of the parish. Quality of life is being affected. Emergency services are being hampered. Area traffic problems cannot easily be fixed, which means we have to live with them for many years. There's no compelling reason to approve this zoning change and the 3 years of heavy construction that go with it. A change in zoning is not a right. It should be rejected. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in opposition?
I'm Dennis Ryan, priest at St. Michael's Episcopal Church and preschool. As you saw in the drawing that was presented earlier, there are some contiguous boundaries between the church and the proposed zoning change. Those woods, those God-given woods, have been a wonderful piece and part of the security that we offer, not only our church members who are there only once or twice a week, but to children who are there every day. We've gone the extra mile in providing security as best we can. We've installed cameras in every one of our classrooms and on our playgrounds. We have instituted a sign-in process and sign-out process that requires an electronic fingerprint of parents. Let me give you some numbers. These are stakeholders in what I just described, these numbers. We have about 500 members of St. Michael's Episcopal Church. We have 180 preschoolers. On Monday and Wednesday, all of them are there. On other days of the week, the count is a little bit less. We agree that there is potential for drainage problems, and it could very well affect our campus. We agree that traffic will increase on Sharp Road, but there's a component there that has to do not necessarily with health and safety, but with safety and security. We have almost 200 cars in the morning and 200 in the afternoon which enter and exit our driveway, a two-lane driveway, onto a highly traveled, fast-traveled Sharp Road. Guess what's in the toddler seats in each of those exits and entries? Yeah, one of our preschoolers. So, for us to ignore the traffic implications of 100 more residences next door to us wouldn't be fair to our families. Furthermore, the security that I talked about, as far as classrooms and playgrounds, can only go so far. A camera can only see so far. With contiguous property lines, what Ken said about the view out the back of our classrooms and our buildings is not the major part. It's the security. So, we face some issues that the other residents, our neighbors, our good neighbors on Sharp Road don't. I think they must come into play. We've been there since 1986 as a church, for 20 years as a preschool. We have depended upon God's given creation to be our heightened web of security, and any reduction in that severely diminishes our ability to find security for our preschoolers. I think that has to come into play when a zoning change is required. It's not only health and safety, but it's safety and security of those who look to us for that. I hope and pray that this zoning change, if not defeated, will at least be extended until we can find ways to overcome the diminished state that we will find ourselves in as a result of it.
Thank you, sir. The opposition has about 1 minute remaining. If there's anyone who would like to speak, if not, we can transfer that over to the rebuttal. Seeing no one, Mr. Shane, and you will have 16 minutes for rebuttal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen. The rebuttal periods are 5 minutes per case. Per your spokesperson, you respectfully asked for me to combine them, which I did per his request. So as we go into rebuttal, each case will be given 5 minutes, plus Mr. Shane has 6 minutes from the beginning. Thus, he has 16. Opposition will have 11. Thank you.
Well, I hope that I won't need all 16 minutes, but we'll see. With regard to the comments made, I'd like to respond to them as precisely as possible. The suggestion that flooding and drainage is a part of your determination this evening, in my view, is inaccurate from a technical perspective. Again, I've tried to say that I very much respect that issue and by no means suggest that drainage, flooding, things of that nature is not ultra important. I'm a human being just like all of us are, and certainly we have witnessed in this calendar year some events in our own community and in other communities that have demonstrated to us the importance of appropriate drainage. My point is simply this: there's a time and a place, and this is not the time nor the place this evening during the zoning meeting. But since the issue has been brought up and has been a consistent, or let us say, recurring theme, I think there's a few things that hopefully you know as a commission, but the public should take into consideration. If the suggestion is that the development of this land will in fact produce volumes of water that Bayou Tet Lures will not be able to handle, particularly as it goes downstream underneath 190 and ultimately toward the lake, the parish drainage ordinance requires that the rate of discharge of water from the developed site must be 25% less than the rate from its current status, being undeveloped. And so the simple analogy that I always use is that if right now in its undeveloped state this 104 acres is generating after a certain rain event 100 gallons of water per hour that's being discharged, then when all 103 homes have been built, only 75 gallons of water can be discharged per hour from that site. So if you take the issue and look at your code, then I suggest to you the argument can be aptly made that if constructed properly, if maintained properly, the development of the land actually provides an enhancement to the overall drainage system, because the rate of flow from this tract is in fact going to be less. Now, it's easy for me to say that this evening to you. It will be my job and my client's job to demonstrate and prove that in the drainage study that we submit to the parish drainage engineers, who will study it and make comment and report to you if and when this case comes back to you during the Planning Commission process. To suggest that this project is contrary to the 2025 plan or to state law as it relates to health and safety reasons, I would only suggest to you, again, you heard the staff report. I read some excerpts to you tonight from the staff report as it relates to what the 2025 plan called for in this particular area. And I think it is a fair suggestion to talk about the consequence of traffic and drainage as it relates to safety and health, and perhaps, as Father Ryan said, even security. But my point to you is that the laws have required objective criteria which require developers and developments to submit sophisticated studies, at which point those studies are graded or evaluated when looking at what the codes require. And so again, I would suggest that the studies will speak for themselves. And as to traffic, I would suggest to you that the study that was submitted does speak for itself, not only as it relates to safety, but also as to security. With all due respect, I do not believe the suggestion of a modest density, single-family residential subdivision abutting a preschool and church is suggestive of a security concern. I mean, predominantly there's single-family subdivisions all over the place in that corridor. Granted, they don't abut this particular site, but there is no suggestion or evidence that would tell us now we're talking about the use. Is the single-family residential use one that is inopposite or inappropriate to be next to the St. Michael's facility? And I would suggest to you respectfully, I don't believe there's any evidence that would withhold or substantiate such a finding. I know this planning commission well only because I appear before you, but I also know the residents behind me who have turned out to Q community meetings and to this meeting tonight. And to suggest that the parish engineer or this planning commission is going to rubber stamp a drainage plan that is submitted in connection with this subdivision, if that were the case, I'm sure I'd have a lot more hair and it wouldn't be nearly as silver as it is, because thankfully for all of us as residents, the parish engineering department takes their job very seriously, and I know you do. And if this case has the opportunity to proceed, if there was ever a drainage study that's going to get scrutiny, I'm very confident this one will. And it should. And it should, for the reasons I have stated earlier. With regard to the yield plan, I can only suggest to you that if you look at page 2 of the zoning staff report on the A2 request, staff has told you the results of the yield plan. It is attached to your report. I have to assume that it was prepared properly as per the yield plan criteria that the parish implores. I mean, the suggestion that 99 hundredths of a unit per acre is too dense, is not compatible, is inappropriate, simply doesn't make sense when we look at the other single-family residential development in the corridor. It does not take a shoehorn to put this subdivision in its place. In fact, this subdivision should fit relatively easily into the 104 acres that's at this location. This developer did not come to you asking to get a wetlands permit and create 150 to 200 units like a lot of developments do. This developer elected to only try to develop the non-wet areas and to connect them the best he could. He also thought it would be wise to provide a variety of what we think is high-quality product, different size lots, different style homes. The suggestion that the garden homes are inappropriate at this location, most of the garden homes that I'm familiar with through the developments I have handled typically command a higher square foot value than other homes. They're often smaller by nature, but people are more inclined to spend the dollars that they want for a custom kitchen or some other form of amenity or quality of finish in their home. So the garden homes are not something to be looked at as perhaps a less desirable form of housing. We think, if anything, it will be a very important and good component, not only to our plan, but also to the other subdivisions on Sharp Road. I have to emphasize again, please take a look at the zoning, not only abutting this site, but up and down Sharp Road. And I dare say that there's anyone here this evening, or the great majority of the people here this evening, live in subdivisions that are at a minimum A2 zone, and in many cases have greater density than A2. Some of those PUDs don't even have an underlying zone, but in truth and in fact, if you calculate the number of units in the subdivision, and I gave you some of those statistics earlier, the density is much greater. To me, that's not a justification for a new subdivision, but it is a suggestion that it's compatible. It is a suggestion that it's reasonable. and it gives you good reason, compelling reason, to allow this piece of property to be developed in a like-kind manner as the other subdivisions along Sharp Road, provided the standards of parish codes are met. Lastly, when you deliberate this matter this evening, I would ask that you take into consideration the opportunity that the developer has, not as it relates to his personal economics. Certainly he's entrepreneurial, and I'm by no means suggesting that he's not doing the development for a profit motive, but it is not the only motive. Mr. McHugh and his partner, Mr. Intravia, have developed nearly 4,000 lots in this subdivision over the last 35 years. Whether they like it or not, their fingerprints are all over the western portion of this parish. They are very considerate and conscious of the fact that Brentwood Estates will in fact have a lasting impact on Sharp Road. For that reason, they selected an underlying A2 zone, they selected a 66% green space, and they selected a variety of lot sizes and housing that they thought would be fair and reasonable to the neighbors that live in that area. Please provide them the opportunity to make Brentwood Estates a reality. Thank you much.
Thank you, Mr. Shane. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in favor of the case? Hearing none, I now will turn it over to the opposition for 11 minutes of rebuttal. Joe?
First off, I'd like to address a couple of the comments, and let me hit the yield plan straight up and right on. In the yield plan, it states in the code, the number, this is using the yield plan.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Address the commission.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
This is using the yield plan calculations. The number of lots may be established by a yield plan, which they have done, consisting of conventional street layouts. But those conventional street layouts include, but they are not limited to, the location of wetlands and the drainage features. You can't count the drainage features in your yield plan if they don't exist in your street layout. The street is going right over the street that they're using is going right over where the retention ponds have to be. And the retention ponds extend over into the 50-foot no-cut easement. He's out of room going into the wetlands. He's got to bring that wetland pond back into what he currently has as lots. The yield plan calculation does not take into account what the law requires them to take into account in 4B, as we've laid out in your written comments. So I really think that we need to see a review. Helen, I sent you an email to this effect on Friday going over all of these issues. I didn't get anything back. I also talked to Mark Daigle. Mark, have you raised these comments? He says, yes, I have. I've sent repeated emails going over these same concerns and questions. I didn't get an answer back. So my question to you is, if the PUD is approved tonight, does that also approve the yield plan of 103 units? Can you answer that question, yes or no?
The underlying zoning would be approved. Those are planning questions that will come forth.
Okay,
as
so
far as
the unit determinations at the planning level.
correct. So,
Okay.
so long as all the calculations are properly met.
And we can challenge those calculations, correct?
Certainly in the
Thank
public forum, yes.
Great. Okay. The next question is with regards to the drainage plan. The drainage plan actually works if it's appropriate to consider an individual property as a discrete unit. You can't do that in this watershed anymore. We've got people going off the road getting fully submerged in their cars because of the existing drainage. Jeff said that they have to retain 25%, reduce the flow 25%. It's 104 acres. The drainage, the rainfall event they have to design for is 24 inches, a foot of rain in 24 hours. It's easy math. That's 104 acre feet. He's got to reduce it by 25%. So he's got to retain about 26 acre feet. He's got 5 acres of drainage ponds in his yield plan, which he doesn't account for in the numbers, but he shows in the layout. 25 acre feet into 5 acres is a depth of 5 feet. If you dig the depth 5 feet, and let's say that you only have to retain half of it, 2.5 feet, you're going to impact the wetlands. You're going to drain the wetlands, which is why I said in his state environmental submittal, is he going to impact the wetlands? I think by definition he is. He's also going to bring in 31,000 cubic feet of fill. You apply that to the 25 acres he actually can develop, and to say that he selected this plan based upon the available acreage, he's mandated by the wetlands restrictions just to that acreage. So he is, in fact, I believe, correct. He's shoehorning what he can get, given the federal regulations about what he's able to do from a wetland standpoint. So in conclusion, I think I've talked to the parish engineers. They agree a comprehensive watershed study needs to be done. I talked to Jay for an hour, and he agrees with me. It needs to be done. But he says, my hands are tied. I can't look at it until the zoning is approved. But yet the protocol only calls for the drainage to be evaluated for the individual parcel. We've been doing that in this area for too long. It's reached the tipping point. The choke point at 190 can't take any more water. And for a drain event, I don't think you can put in the drainage structures and able to do it. I talked to Reichert. We met with them, and we said, Reichert, we realize we're asking you guys to go against what the protocol calls for. But we are at that tipping point. Common sense says we're there. We can no longer go about and work and do what actually has worked in the past when the watershed's minimally developed. I think it's okay to go with this protocol. We're not there anymore. Our neighborhood proves that. You look at the flooding that occurred, the pictures that are circulating from the recent rain of the water going over the street in Westwood. We're there. We have to start thinking about what we're doing. We can't just check the process and the protocol and go forward. Our process doesn't work when we reach these critical saturation points. We're there. And I hope you will realize that and deny the use of the permit.
Thank you.
Just one comment. Putting this all together, when we hear about drainage, what we're really talking about is an entrepreneur trying to make money in a piece of property, and I understand that. But what we're really talking about is the entrepreneur doesn't want to spend the engineering costs to ascertain if the drainage proposed in this area, everyone sitting in this room knows that there's drainage problems in this area. There's not a person here who doesn't know that. So all we're asking is that, hey, we got an issue here. We know it's an issue. Our protocol says this. It's not a contract. As I was told last time I was here, that you have contracts in writing. Well, this is a protocol. And all we're asking is, hey, spend the money now before you open Pandora's box. Let's get an accurate assessment of the drainage, and then all these issues may go away. But all we're talking about here is that the entrepreneur doesn't have to spend some money to find out what we already know, namely we got a problem here, we have to address it. It can't be down the road, it has to be addressed now.
Thank you. Yes, you have about 4 minutes remaining.
Thank you. One last thing on the garden homes. I visited them all with some other people. They're beautiful. Don't get me wrong. Natchez Trace, beautiful. 19 garden homes in that giant development. 19, not 50. None of them are like this design. Every one of them are bordered by extensive amount of woods. In Bedeco Creek, acres of preserve. There was one that was close, Maison du Lac, about a 30 to 50 foot buffer between it and Normandy Oaks, the only one that had any room. The rest of these are all being developed in undeveloped parts of the parish, not a highly developed area. You got to realize it's completely different. It's not about garden homes. It's about the fact the garden home development doesn't match the existing area. Don't confuse that. Don't let him confuse you there. That's not what we're talking about. Traffic, you all drive these roads. I met with the traffic engineers. Everybody knows I-12, 190, 59's a train. They're all train wrecked. There's no easy fix. You know that. The more development we allow inside this area, the bigger the development in this area, the problem's just going to get worse, and there's no easy fix. They're state roads. The state has no money. Pat Brister said at last council meeting, she said, our odds of getting any money in this parish are really low. She said that as they were wanting to pass the 3/4 economic development money. She stood up and said, we're not going to get money. We have to pass the 3/4 cent tax so we can get money. What makes us think we're going to fix these road problems? They're happening because of cross-cut traffic. You all know it. You live here. You drive them. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. But we live it. I don't need a traffic study. I get on the road. You do too. You know, you don't need a traffic study to tell you I-12's a wreck. Do you think they're going to build a bridge over the Tchefuncte River? I don't think so. There's 300 apartments opening up right behind Sam's right now. 300. Imagine when those people have two ways to get on. What do you think is going to happen to I-12? As I-12 goes, 190 goes, 59 goes. They all go together. They all crash. The bridge over Bogafalai has been talked about for 20 years. It's a train wreck going there. You can't make the money come around, but you can keep it, your part of keeping it from getting worse. That's all we're asking you to do. I'm not so sure a moratorium's not in place for this specific area. There's too much. You should be saving the development for the things that are commercial in nature down the commercial corridors where if you're gonna make money for the parish. Don't cram something in an area that's fine. Don't screw it up some more. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in opposition? Yes, sir. About a minute remaining.
That's plenty. My name is David Lowe. I live 150 Glendale Heights. I try and bring a question down to the simplest form. Why are you asked to rezone? So somebody can make more money. That's not a reason to rezone. That's basically what it amounts to. The developer can make more money if it's rezoned. That's a reason in his mind maybe, but not in mine. Let everybody else put up with the consequences later. As far as the size of these garden home lots, 45 by 65, I doubt that there's any, I don't know of any in Sharp Road, anywhere close to that small of a lot. And lastly, I have a fear that somewhere down the line, a year, 2, 3, 5, 10, somebody's going to come up with a way to develop the wetlands. And next thing you know, somebody's going to come in and want to put another PUD in, and the rest of that wetlands is all going to be developed, and we're going to have major problems. We have problems now with drainage. Traffic is a problem. Unless that emergency vehicle is coming to your house for you, maybe not so important. But traffic is a problem. Drainage is a problem. Making a profit for a developer, I'm sorry, that's not something that I think we need to be worried about. That's not on my list of things that's on my mind. Go make money somewhere where there's plenty of room. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That will conclude the presentations. So at this time, I would close it to the public and I would bring it to the commission. Commissioner Davis.
Jeff, can you come up and to the podium, please?
Yes,
In
sir.
this first request, you're asking for the 80 acres to be rezoned from A1 to A2, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is there a reason you didn't go from A1 to A1A?
Yes, sir.
And what was that reason?
Because we did not want and did not think it would be appropriate to develop the wetlands area, which is, again, about 60, probably around 65 acres. We needed to achieve a certain number of units in order to justify the cost of infrastructure that we have with our streets, our roads, our community, sewer and water, things of that nature. So it's not so much to make money, but it is to make as many developments, make those improvements economically feasible.
Yes, and I understand about that too, because I mean, I understand how the church owns the property and they have a right to try to develop it as best and efficiently as they can. Let's say this commission makes a recommendation for A1A though. Does that mean that your developer would try to get wetlands permits on this property?
I think it would be inappropriate for me to guess on that. It doesn't mean it's not a good question, but our plan obviously is based as on the PUD plan before you. I would say that if this commission and the council sees otherwise, I mean, we obviously would have to go back to the drawing board.
Sure.
But I think one obvious possibility would be to try to intrude into the wetlands and get a permit. Yes, sir.
And that, to
But
me, I
that's-
don't
I
like
don't
that.
want that to be
I don't want that to
misunderstood
happen
as a
either.
commitment that that's what the developer would do. But I mean, again, the same economics control to properly develop the property to include community sewer and water, the first-class drainage and streets that the law requires. A minimal number of units are needed in order to make that pro forma work.
Thank you. I mean, that's all I need right now. Thank you. I have a question for staff. Oops. Okay. Oh, sorry. It seems like to me we currently have a drainage problem now in the area without any increase of this design and implementation. Is that correct? Is the parish looking at doing something with this?
That would be a question for Jay Watson, who is the engineer. We can wait and ask Helen if she's talked to engineering, but that's not something that I am familiar with.
Yeah, I'm having concerns about that first. That's the major concern is now, it seems like to me for the individuals living around this area that they're currently having drainage problems now. Maybe you can assist me on this. Is that correct? Yes. I was just asking staff, do you know of any plans on trying to help the drainage currently without any of this development taking place?
Well, at this time, that's a question that would have to be asked to the engineering office.
You see, but that's the whole issue, I think, personally. I understand people's fears about excess drainage. I understand the controls that we have, and we say we have to have 25%, less drainage coming up. I also look at the property itself. I understand about building retention ponds, which may be something that the individuals need themselves. I mean, this might be a double-sided sword that's actually pretty good, if you think about it. Maybe it's something to increase the retention ponds in that area as well. But I'm just having a problem to trying to make a final decision right now on taking a large piece of property, making it A1, adding together with a PUD, and I understand that the development is trying to use the yield plan of 103 units, but is using the PUD to continue that 103 units and only put it on the properties in which it's not wetlands. That's basically what we're trying to do. Is that correct? Yes. Okay.
Mr. Shane, would you like to address? Please do so.
Yeah, sure, Shane. I mean, that's what I'm just having a difficulty with.
Yes, sir. Well, again, I think the comments that I essentially hear is your concern about drainage and whether or not the change of land use, the change of zoning is appropriate. And again, I would suggest to you that they're two different issues. I mean, the risk the petitioner takes is that if, in fact, the zoning is changed, that's no guarantee that the drainage study will be acceptable either to the parish engineer, to this planning commission, or ultimately to the council. The use of the non-wet area by the developer was also to preserve the wetlands area, the conservation concern. We're talking about 65 acres that are going to be kept preserved. There's not many developments and developers that come before you with a 100+ acre plan that have minimal intrusion into wetlands. So I understand the point, but again, I would suggest to you that the zoning commission has traditionally deferred on the drainage questions until you hear the case as a planning commission. And that's not a kick the can down the street comment from me. It's the...
Order, please.
It's the
Mr. Shane is absolutely correct.
It's the process that the council has ordained, not the developer, not the zoning or planning commission, but what I guess we'll refer to as parish government.
Just to emphasize the point Mr. Shane made on that, understand this commission serves two very different roles, and we're actually commissioners of two very different commissions. Zoning has to do with what we're here tonight, providing the underlying zoning of property. Just because it's zoned, then it goes into a planning if and when a developer wishes to develop it. At that time, issues such as traffic, drainage, densities, a variety of different aspects come into the planning. It's far more detailed and is a three-pronged process so that we iterate throughout that. For those of you who have attended Planning Commission, we would ask very different questions, be provided much different information, and it's very comprehensive before it ultimately would get to a final. So please understand, we are guided by policies and ordinances that are written by parish government, and we follow those very clearly. We are not the governing body relative to the policies. We ensure that those policies and that those principles are followed. That's what our roles are, and that's what we endeavor to do. Commissioner Casabon.
Yes, Jeff, the engineer, what type of wetlands you get? I know there's different types of wetlands, and the pastor was talking about the wooded area. What exactly, how is this designated? What type of wetlands?
I don't know that I'm aware of the classification of the various types of wetlands. I would imagine, though, that the wetlands areas near the bayou are extremely high-quality wetlands for good reasons, because of topography, because of vegetation, hydrology, and probably soil type. As it relates to the area around the perimeter, and if, in particular, St. Michael's Church, that area is non-wet, and that's why we thought that it would be an appropriate place to put single-family homes there. Those homes are going to have a minimum, and I'll ask staff to correct me if I'm wrong, but a 25-foot rear setback. I think we'll have a 20 to 25-foot rear setback, and we will also have a requirement to have a boarded fence, wooden fence, or some type of opaque fence that separates the development from the church property, or for that matter, any other residentially developed properties that we would abut. The other thing I would mention is that none of this property that we're seeking to develop is in what the parish has designated to be a critical drainage area, unless Mr. McHugh corrects me there. And for those of you that are not familiar with that terminology, there are areas in the parish that have been designated as critical drainage areas. This tract is not. That doesn't mean to suggest the drainage issue isn't important. I'm only suggesting that it's not in. Sometimes we bring subdivisions to you that are located in whole or in part in a critical drainage area.
Correct. Thank you. This case and the public meetings has brought to light many questions on the drainage that it takes something like this to get these problems kind of jailed, that we can look at the whole area. Yes, we put in subdivisions here, we listen to the drainage and so on. We are looking at a zoning issue in which the petitioner has presented the housing and the setting of the PUD that would, to me, save a lot of the wetlands, and how they had configured it, some conservatory, and am I right, conservatory means they cannot go back and do anything with that. Is that true, Helen, when it's in conservatory, this part? The back area.
The northern part is a conservation area.
Conservation, I said
The
conservatory.
remaining portion
conservation.
is still wetlands.
Correct.
But if they would want to develop it, then it would have to come back in front of the zoning board.
But the conservation area, can they go back and do that, to develop that?
I'm not
We're
aware.
talking about conservatory. This is,
Yeah, I'm not aware that it's
Conservation.
possible to do so.
okay. But the point is that the drainage has been brought to light. We, as a commission, will not know the impact until we do have a drainage study. Our information, how we go forth with the PUD, there's some issues on the PUD that that I don't agree with, but this has to deal with zoning. Is it appropriate to take this much acreage, configure the homes in which we can save the wetlands, and not develop the whole thing, even if they wanted, to mitigate it? When that drainage plan comes to us, it may not fit. We may not have this many homes in it. We may not have that many garden homes. I find that I have a tendency that they kind of put more in because they have a feeling that they're going to end up, having to take some out. We won't know those things until we get the drainage plan and in front of us and the engineers let us know about it and stuff. I feel like this is a plan that would work with the zoning part. But like I said, once we rezone it, we still have a lot to look at, and it will bring to light some of the problems. And we have seen that these areas, when they are developed, they can't go forth until they have fixed some drainage in other areas or how it looks, it goes into that. If I'm not mistaken, we still, maybe Kelly can answer it because we don't have engineering here. Would this be plugged into our drainage study, which is a model that the parish has? And when our engineers look at this, they put this particular area into it and how it would flow into the Tetlors and so forth. And what would need to be done on this property in order for that to happen. So,
Is that a question for Mr. McHugh?
he just shook his head.
Okay.
I was waiting for him to correct me if I was wrong, but yes, the drainage study is, the drainage model, I should say, is what I think they use for some of them.
That's correct.
You have something, and I'll make a motion.
Are you finished?
Yes.
Commissioner, thank you. Excuse me one second. Joe, I see your hands up, but until a commissioner addresses a particular question to you, the public comments are stopped at this time. Okay?
Let them know I'm available.
Thank you, sir. And I like the shirt. It sets out nicely. Commissioner Lauren.
I met with several of you when we had some of the community meetings here earlier. And one of the things we run into as commissioners is a great deal of the time, John Q. homeowner doesn't really understand the process, the steps involved in getting a project like this from beginning to end. There are steps that are decreed by the parish ordinance. The first one is the one we're doing with tonight, and that is this single-family residence with this kind of density appropriate for this size piece of property in this part of the parish? That's what we decide tonight. If that's approved, then it becomes important because that's the starting step for the developer to then start spending the big bucks. He has to do a detailed traffic impact analysis by a professional engineer. He has to do a hydrology study by a professional engineer that has to be accepted by the parish engineer, and it has to be brought back before this group in the planning stage. Sir, would you please put your arm down? That's disturbing. It has to come back before this group before it goes to the next step. And then it has to go to the final step. So that there, at a minimum, there are 4 public meetings. Now, just for the sake of discussion, if Mr. McHugh did everything exactly perfect, and he met and exceeded all the requirements that the parish had, if you have a drainage problem there now, it's not going to solve your drainage problem. Okay? It's not going to solve your drainage problem. And you cannot, wait now, you can't expect him to come in here with one little piece of property that he's 100 acres that he's proposing to develop and to come up with a plan that's going to solve the drainage problem for the basin. If you do have that kind of problem, then you need to get with your parish councilman and have some kind of overall study done, okay? But tonight, this is not about that. This tonight is about land use. That's all it's about. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to echo some of the comments of Commissioner Lauren, and he's absolutely right. The zoning and the planning commission are very well defined. What was discussed in some aspects is a parish-wide or a region-wide comprehensive drainage and or traffic study or impacts. That's far beyond the scope of this commission. That is, Commissioner Lauren said, and Commissioner Casabon referred to, and Commissioner Davis, is relative to the parish council and the parish president. The governing body has the authorities to look at those. We follow very strict ordinances and policies relative to, right tonight, zoning. And so that's where we are. Needless to say, I am sure that our elected officials have heard more than once as to the needs for these. And again, we would respectfully ask you as the public to address those issues with your elected officials. Commissioner Davis.
Question for Helen. So the planning department has made recommendations to approve both the A1 to A2 zoning increase and also the PUD overlay. Is that correct? Question for Jeff again, if you don't mind. Since this is all packaged together, I actually like your PUD design. I think the PUD design itself meets the requirements for a true PUD. You have a diversity in lot size. You have easy access from Sharp Road. No, excuse me. This is a primary
Point of order,
road
please.
in the parish of St. Tammany. It's a primary road. So the PUD itself, I think, would be fine. I actually like the idea of the retention ponds. Obviously, you'll need those, especially in the wetlands. I really like the idea that you're not intending on building on any of the wetlands. With that being said, I'll make a motion to approve the A1 to A2 zoning increase for the first case.
I'll second it.
We have a motion by Commissioner Davis to approve the A1 to A2 on zoning case 2016-294-ZC. We have a second by Commissioner Casabon. Are there any further comments? Please vote. Motion carries. Zoning case 2016-295-ZC will now be questioned by the commission. Commissioner Davis.
Jeff, on the PUD overlay,
Yes, sir.
just looking at the PUD itself, like I said earlier, I thought it was, with the different diversity and stuff, I think it meets that needs. The only concern I do have is lot 51, in between the green space you have at the entrance. Now, I know this is not planning, but before you come up with tentative planning for us, lot 51, as soon as you get into the subdivision, you have green space on the left of that, and then you have the additional green space north of that for the active retention area.
Yes, sir.
That kind of doesn't make sense to me, to be honest. I mean, you might want to eliminate lot number 51. But with that being said, and of course, the length of Brentwood Drive all the way back to the end cul-de-sac is pretty long. You'll have to ask for a variance of that, and I don't know if this commission is going to grant that. But
Point of order. Joe, in all due respect, any other disruption, I'm going to ask you to be removed.
all I'm trying to do now is I'm making a motion to approve a PUD overlay. And that's, I'd like to make that motion.
And your two comments are noted, Mr. Davis. We'll study
you.
those.
So, Commissioner Davis, just for clarity, the proposed zoning A2 and the plant unit development?
That's correct.
That is correct. We have a motion by Commissioner Davis to approve. Commissioner Loring.
Yes, I have one question, and I guess this would be to Mr. McHugh, or Jeff, whichever one is proper. With 65% of this property being set aside as green space, and the acknowledged problem in the area of drainage, would there be any possibility that some portion of that 65 acres could be used for additional retention to help alleviate an overall drainage problem, if that makes sense?
Yes, sir. I think if the parish concluded that additional retention was needed in that area, I'm sure that we would not be opposed to donating those wetlands areas, assuming it's a reasonable amount and reasonable locations. But I think your question is, can that land be utilized to help the drainage concerns of others in the area?
That's been enumerated here all evening.
Yes, sir, but let me make it clear that I am not meaning to suggest that my client would underwrite that. But we'd underwrite it to the extent that we donate the land. And we're paying dearly for the land, even the wetlands. So if that is something that eventually comes as a result of the regional drainage study or whoever it might be within parish government, yes, sir, that's something we're certainly amenable to.
Okay, thank you, Jeff.
Just a point of clarification. Commissioner Fitzmaurice did second Commissioner Davis's motion to approve. Commissioner Richard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I supported the zoning change because it is appropriate land use. I'm struggling a little bit with the PUD. Particularly, it makes total sense to use a PUD in this area, but right now, we still have some, I know we're going to deal with the drainage issues in the future, in the near future, but I'm hung up on a couple of things. I'm not so confident, are we being asked to approve the waiver of the cul-de-sac length today? Are we being asked to request a waiver of the block length today? No, but just understand that in the future, I'm going to have a problem with that. I think we talked about life safety. We're going to have a plan here that makes certain that the residents in that area and in the subdivision are going to be safe. And the reason those block lengths are put in place is for safety. So I just wanted to go on record as saying that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Richard. This time, are there any other questions or comments by the commission? If not, we have a motion by Commissioner Davis to approve, second by Commissioner Fitzmaurice. Please vote. Motion carries. This time we'll take a brief recess for those who would like to leave. Keep it up. Mr. Randolph is not here. Mr. Randolph is absent. This will also be in the minutes of the meeting as well for public record.
I just had one question I really wanted to ask. And that is, when we come and ask for a comprehensive watershed study, am I going to get the same answer that it's just not in our protocol, I've got to go somewhere else?
To us or to the committee? You go to the council. That's a council question, not us. It's not us, it's the council. And I'd ask the question. We would encourage you to ask the question.
Okay.
But that's not us.
I understand there's this protocol that's going to take place, there's a series of steps. When do you guys get the traffic study from you and a drainage plan when there's going to be a public hearing or analysis of it? I mean, how does that work?
There's an.
So how do we as a public become aware that there's going to be a public hearing?
They'll post a sign, just like they post a zoning case sign. They'll post it with same big yellow sign, just different case number. And in the newspaper.
And
those schedules will be on the website?
Yes.
Dates will be on the website?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, that's the one you guys.
I will, but my faith is really,
Joe, your questions are really relevant to planning. And you guys were addressing planning type questions. So please, this is the same form. It's a public forum.
Hey, just a question. Has anybody come before this commission in the last 10 years wanting to develop 65 acres of wetlands? Yeah. So I mean, but the argument of we're doing a wonderful thing, not doing it, it's because nobody.
Respectfully, ironically, you know the developer very well. He's arguably one of the best engineering firms.
And I understand, and I'm not. It's not about. I'm not. It wouldn't matter if it was somebody from Timbuktu. The question, that's not our point. We're not really picking on people.
Your issues are planning.
Yeah.
And come back. You'll see it all. It's very transparent.
Thank you for your time. We'll be back.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd ask that you clear the chamber or stay and watch or participate in the rest of the cases if you would like. We got most of the commission. Thank you. 2016-325-ZC, existing zoning A4 single-family residential district, proposed zoning HC1 highway commercial district. The parcel 20,000 square feet. The petitioner Richard A. Trask. The owner Richard A. Trask. The parcel is located on the west side of U.S. Highway 11, north of North 2nd Avenue, south of North 3rd Avenue, being lots 6, 7, 12, and 13, Ward 8, District 14. This case was postponed from the August 2nd, 2016 meeting. Staff.
The 2025 future land use plan calls for the area to be developed with commercial uses. There is an existing building on the site which was previously operated as a barber shop. Staff does not have any objection to the request considering there's an existing site, zone HC1 highway commercial, directly to the south. The staff recommends that the request for HC1 highway commercial district designation be approved.
Thank you. Is the petitioner here? Is there anyone who is speaking on behalf of the petitioner? Seeing none, is there anyone in opposition to the case? Pardon? Jeff, no, Mr. Shane's name is not on this particular case. You're good. Mr. Shane, you can take a recess. Again, is the petitioner here? Anyone representing the petitioner? Is there anyone in opposition? Seeing none, I close it to the public and I bring it to the commission. Commissioner Drum.
Yes, sir. Since there's no one here to or for against it, I make a motion it be denied.
A motion to be denied by Commissioner Drum.
How about if we just
Miss Commissioner Casabon.
table it until?
Wait a minute.
we
No,
find
no,
out?
no, no, no. If you would wait,
No,
please.
no.
Commissioner Lauren.
I'll second it.
Second to be denied. Are there any further comments? We have a motion for denial. That means a yes vote is a motion to deny. Please vote. Yes, sir.
Just one quick comment, and then we can vote. This is a
second time this case has been on our agenda. Second time the gentleman has not had the courtesy to appear. If it's denied, he can appeal it to the council, which can overturn our denial.
Correct.
If we postpone it indefinitely, then it stays at the zoning commission level until the gentleman comes back and decides that he wants to move forward with it, or either it just lays dormant indefinitely. Am I correct on that?
You are absolutely correct.
Kirk and Martha, I would
No,
ask
well,
that
you-
you may consider to postpone indefinitely.
The way that would work, Commissioner Dougherty, is we do have a motion and a second to deny. However, if you feel compelled, you can make a motion to postpone indefinitely. That will take precedence over a motion to deny.
I will make a motion to postpone indefinitely.
So moved. Second by,
Third and fourth.
who second? Commissioner Richard. All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Dougherty to postpone indefinitely, second by Commissioner Richard. That motion takes precedence over a motion to deny. As such, is there any more comments by the commission? Therefore, we have a motion to postpone indefinitely. Please vote. Motion carries. Just for the record, the only way that that can be heard again is to come forth to this commission, and the commission would put it back on our agenda if they so desire to do so. Otherwise, it will be in limbo indefinitely. 2016-329-ZC, existing zoning A3 Suburban District, proposed zoning A3 Suburban District and manufactured housing overlay. The parcel, 22,500 square feet. The petitioner, Robbie Mazer. The owner, Barbara A. Garcia. The parcel is located on the south side of Cypress Drive, west of Peachtree Drive, being Lot 20A, Square 23, River Garden Subdivision, Ward 8, District 9. Staff?
The 2025 future land use plan calls for the area to be developed with residential uses, including manufactured housing. Staff has no objection to the request. The staff recommends that the request for a manufactured housing overlay designation be approved.
Thank you. Is the petitioner here? Is there anyone representing the petitioner or in favor of the request? Is there anyone in opposition to the request? Seeing none, I close it to the public and I bring it to the commission. Commissioner Dougherty.
Mr. Chairman, this is it's the second time. First time that we've heard this particular case.
Correct.
And following basically the protocol that we've used previously, I would make a motion to postpone till our October meeting.
I'll second.
So moved. Second by Commissioner Lauren. Any further comment? So we have a motion by Commissioner Dougherty to postpone for 1 month to our October meeting, and it's second by Commissioner Lauren. Please vote. Motion carries. 2016-330-ZC, existing zoning, A2 Suburban District. Proposed zoning, PF1 Public Facilities District. The parcel, 7.08 acres. The petitioner, Jeffrey Shane. The owner, Lambert Investments Incorporated, Donald C. Lambert. The parcel is located on the north side of Harrison Avenue, west of Flowers Drive, Ward 3, District 2. Staff?
The 2025 future land use plan calls for the site to be developed as a conservation area and with uses that would include the preservation of the natural environment. The requested zoning change does not meet the objectives of the 2025 future land use plan. However, staff does not have any objection to the request, considering the location of the site along a major arterial and the purpose of the PF1 zoning, which is to provide for the location of government and institutional uses to the public. The staff recommends that the request for a PF1 Public Facilities District designation be approved.
Thank you. Mr. Shane?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Honorable Commission. Jeff Shane of the Jones Fussell Law Firm at P.O. Box 1810 in Covington. I represent the owner and also the petitioner in this matter. I have provided you a copy of a letter this evening that I will make reference to. This is an interesting case in that it is a little over 7-acre parcel on Harrison Avenue, currently owned by Lambert Investments, Inc. There is a gentleman by the name of Mark Lewis that has a company that he has formed, St. Tammany Pet Cemetery LLC, that is under contract to acquire this property, and in fact he intends to do some of the development and then donate the property to the St. Tammany Humane Society. He is a gentleman that is very interested in the well-being of both the residences and communities, but also the pets that many of us have throughout communities. In looking at the type use that will be made of the property, and that again is literally for a pet cemetery and also a pet park, I met with staff and we determined that the best and most restrictive zoning, if you will, for that type use would be the PF, or public facility zone, particularly in light of the fact that the property is going to be donated to an agency that is an arm of parish government. So that is the business plan. I think some obvious questions would be, are there impacts from this use? We believe those impacts will be minimal for good and obvious reasons, but this piece of property, as it is developed, will have to meet all of the requirements of your ordinances as it relates to if a traffic study is needed because of the type use and the size of the parcel, certainly as it relates to drainage, certainly as it relates to buffers, as to landscaping, as to setbacks, as to lighting. And I'm not suggesting that the pet cemetery or pet park, in my view, would be obtrusive or offensive, but the point is there are checks and balances in order to procure a permit in order to undergo the development. But the first step, of course, is to seek a recommendation of zoning from this commission to the council. So in that regard, we ask that you make that recommendation for PF1 to the council. If I have any time, I'd like to reserve it either in rebuttal or for questions that some of you may have later in the hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Shane. Is there anyone else in the public who wishes to speak in favor of this case? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition? If you please come to the podium, sir. And have you filled out a speaker's card as well? Thank you. You'll state your name and address for the record.
My name is Wayne Hilliard. I live at 100 Wild Azalea in Singing Rivers Estates, which is right off of Harrison Avenue, right off of Dog Pound Road. That piece of property that the Lamberts own is a very large piece of property. The 7+ acres that they want to redevelop butts up to and comes into the Singing River neighborhood. We drove through Wild Azalea, which I live on, and there are pink tape where the, I guess the surveyors came in and took the survey of the property. I'm not too sure how far it goes back. There is a road, Wild Azalea, that stops right there at the Lambert property. This is not the place for a cemetery. This is not the place for a commercial development of anything. This is a residential neighborhood, and everything that butts up to that is a residential neighborhood. On Harrison Avenue, everything that's around there is a residential neighborhood. There is a SPCA there now already, which is on the left side of Harrison. That's fine, that's been there forever. But there is no reason to put another commercial piece of property, be it a pet cemetery, be it a human cemetery, in that neighborhood. I don't know if you all are aware of this, but there is a big traffic impact on that road. There are over 15,000, and we checked because we just went through another zoning problem, another zoning issue down the road. But there are 15,000 cars and vehicles that travel Harrison Avenue daily. Daily. We also have a report on accidents on Harrison Avenue. In 2010, there was 113 accidents on Harrison Avenue. In 2011, it rose 2%. In 2012, it rose 45% to 162. Currently at 2014, I don't have 15 or 16, but 2014, there were 209 accidents on Harrison Avenue. This is not the place, this is not the time, this is not the area to put this kind of facility in a neighborhood, a residential neighborhood, and it is a residential neighborhood. So I'm asking the commission to please deny this rezoning. It's A2, leave it that way. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ma'am, if you'd like to come up, state your name and address for the record. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Linda Ray, and I live at 105 Wild Azalea Drive in Singing Rivers Estate. I ask that you not rezone this to PF1, Public Facilities District, and leave it as it is, A2 residential. This is a residential area. Anyone living or using Harrison are well aware of the traffic problems, and if you live along Harrison, you're well aware of the flooding and drainage. Every time a zoning change is made, we who live along Harrison are faced with more flooding and drainage problems. I ask that you do not rezone this at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else in the public who wishes to speak in opposition? Seeing no one else, Mr. Shane, we care to rebut.
Yes, sir. I'll get it to you. I'll get it to you. I assume that you have the same staff report that was put in the developer's packet this evening. And if so, I would ask you to turn to what I think is the last page of this report. And I think what I ought to do is give this to these folks because they may have.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for the indulgence. The reason I wanted you to look at that and for the gentleman and lady to see it is that they are mistaken. The property that we seek to have rezoned does not abut Singing Rivers Estates, nor does it intrude into Singing River Estates. Now, let me make it clear. My client owns 48 acres, and it's actually right now 2 parcels, as you can see, 30 acres and 18 acres. Only the front westerly portion, which is approximately 398.5 feet along Harrison by 775 feet in depth, do we seek to rezone. And we did that consciously so that it would not abut and would have no consequence to anyone in Singing Rivers. There is likewise a sister parcel, if you will, to the east of this tract that's roughly of the same dimension, 7 to 7.5 acres. So that's the first comment I would make with regard to the location of the property. The second comment I would make is that I'm not sure if the threshold is 3 or 4 acres as it relates to the need for a traffic study in a non-residential setting. But I'm confident that this tract at 7 acres will require some form of traffic review. And although it is my opinion, not necessarily as a traffic engineer, because I'm not, and we haven't had a traffic study done, I don't think the pet cemetery and the pet park will generate the kinds of traffic during peak hours, which is traditionally Monday, Friday, the 6:30 to 8:30, the maybe 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock hours, that you would see that could become a problem. But in any event, much as I said in the earlier case, there will be a time and a place to procure such a traffic study or whatever is required in order to get a building permit to measure that consequence. So we tried to pick a portion of this 48 acres that quite frankly would be sort of out of sight, out of mind, and that would not be of concern to the neighbors. And I believe that with the 7 acres of heavily wooded area that is between this site and Singing Rivers, we have accomplished that.
Thank you, Mr. Shane. Would opposition wish to make any further comments?
While I do appreciate the fact that he is putting it on the western end of Harrison Avenue, it's still in a residential neighborhood. Right next to this, where this drawing where it shows pipe, there's a home right here. And it's facing Harrison Avenue. This property right here that goes alongside on the south side here, that's residential property. All of this around here is residential. I also notice on here that there's not a big drainage pond, or there's not a big pond on the Lambert's property, and there is one. And there was a time back in February and March when we had a discussion with the council that they were going to try to purchase that for drainage in that area. So if they take this piece of property, it's right next to a pond. So not only is it around residential, I believe that it will take my property out of commerce, because who wants to buy a piece of property next to a cemetery or even near a cemetery, be it pet or human? Doesn't make any difference. There are other places in this parish that this particular piece of property that they want to develop can go. It doesn't need to be in a residential area. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who wishes to make a comment in rebuttal?
Every time we come before the commissioner or before the council, we're always told the same thing. It's not going to affect anything around us. But those of us who live in that area know it does affect us. So I would appreciate it if you would at this time deny this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in opposition rebuttal? Seeing none, at this time I close it to the public and I bring it to the commission. Commissioner Davis.
Question for staff. PF1 is for post offices, funeral parlors, church, government offices, and passenger transportations. How do we come up with pet cemeteries for this? Just out of curiosity.
Let me pull it up.
Does it specifically say pet cemeteries in the PF1
Cemeteries?
zoning?
It refers to cemeteries. It does not say that it's for pet or.
Oh, I'm just trying to correlate it all. I mean, that's all. Yeah, I see funeral
It allows
parlors,
for cemeteries.
church. I guess churches have cemeteries. I don't know. Just interesting. That's all.
Commissioner Casabon.
Yes, Mr. Shane, I have a question. Do we have buffers off of this, off the highway that it would be situated? You probably wouldn't know it was there.
Yes.
With the design.
Yes, ma'am, we do and we will. And the survey that everyone is looking at is a 1973 survey before the lake was dug by Mr. Lambert. So the reason the lake is not shown is that it wasn't constructed at that time. The gentleman is correct. There's a large lake. It's to the rear of this property. And this particular zoning request, and I might add, it will also have to be re-subdivided in order for this parcel to be transferred and conveyed. This in no way impedes the possibility of the parish possibly acquiring the remainder of the tract for drainage purposes. So again, another reason that this particular portion of the 48 acres was selected, because we knew that there was an interest in the parish possibly acquiring the lake and the surrounding area to help with detention in that area because of other development that's up and down Harrison Avenue.
Thank you. Commissioner Casabon.
Anybody else have a question? I'll make a motion to approve. I think this is very unintrusive and it is commercial. I'll make a motion to approve.
No, ma'am. Please have a seat. Thank you. We have a motion by Commissioner Casabon to approve, second by Commissioner Richardson. Are there any further comments? Please vote. Yes, Commissioner Richardson. Motion carries. (2016-345-ZC), existing zoning, A1 Suburban District, proposed zoning, A2 Suburban District. Parcels 5 acres. The petitioner, Robert A. and Dion D. Melford. Owner, Dion J. Prestonback, Robert A. and Dion D. Melford. Parcels located on the west side of Louisiana Highway 25, north of Louisiana Highway 450, being 85275 and 85271 Highway 25, Franklinton, Ward 2, District 3. Staff.
The 2025 future land use plan calls for the area to be developed with residential and agricultural uses. At this time, staff would like to recommend denial of the request, considering that the site is surrounded by undeveloped land and parcels, residential uses zone A1 suburban. However, I would like to bring to your attention, and this is what is coming through you right now, is that the 5-acre parcel is no longer in a 5-acre parcel by itself. There was a .62-acre parcel in the middle of it. I don't know if it's circulating right now, coming, that was subdivided out of the 5 acres at some point in 1998. And currently what the owner is trying to do is to be able to sell a portion of the front as well as the rear, or further subdivide the site to create 2 additional parcels.
Thank you. Is the petitioner here? If you would like to speak on behalf of the case, please state your name and address for the record.
I'm Preston Back, and I'm the owner of the property. And we're not looking to, right now, to make another site, just one site. My other daughter, we bought the property so that my 2 daughters could be there when I got old so they could take care of me. And so it shocked us when I found out they wouldn't be able to both be there. One is already there, and the other one is going to be there. So there's not going to be another site. There's going to be 3 sites, one mine, one my daughter who is already there, and the new daughter. And that's what it's going to be.
Okay.
It's a family site, and they promised to take care of me.
We're going to hold y'all to that.
Very good. Is there anyone else? Or yes, ma'am.
I just hope that you all will take that in consideration and give me an approval. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in favor of this case? Yes, sir. Please come to the podium, state your name and address.
Well, I'm Robert Mefford at 85271. And I just wanted to clarify what I guess she said. Her house is already built. She lives there. My house is already built. Me and my wife live there. We're only going to build one more house. So,
You're the son-in-law?
Huh?
You're a son-in-law?
I am.
You can take care
And
of your
I'm taking
mother-in-law,
care
right?
of, yeah, I cut the grass all the
Okay.
time.
Just want to make sure.
So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in favor? Yes, ma'am.
I'm the daughter who now needs to move in and take care of mine. My other sister's been taking care of her for a lot of years. I live on the other side of the lake. It's always been our plan when she first purchased the property that we would eventually move there and take care of her. I am actually purchasing the property so that I can give my mother more funds and also be there to take care of her. So it's not just about taking care of her, but it's also going to give her more money too, because my father is no longer alive. So we want to just take care of it. We want to do what we're supposed to do, and we're just going to beautify the place even more than it is. We appreciate you taking into concern for us. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else about the daughter who's currently taking care of her? And make it a family affair. Whether it'll have any impact on the commission, we don't know.
It's worth a try, right?
Give it your
Dion
best.
Mefford, 85271 Highway 25. And yes, I have been taking care of my mother for quite some years, and will do this for the rest of my life. But to have some help would be really greatly appreciated. And my sister and I just need to be closer. So
Very
that's
good.
all I have to say. Thank you.
So we're missing the other son-in-law. Where are you on this? Y'all for it?
Oh, that's all right.
Come on.
That's all right.
I mean, by the way, this is the public record, but the audio videotape is the public record.
My name is Charles Canizaro. I'm Dion's son-in-law, and we want to move on from the South Shore to the North Shore. My brother's a sergeant of detectives in your parish, St. Tammany, Keith Canizaro. I don't know, maybe you might know him. I want to move on this side of the lake so I can visit him more often also. Anyway, we just like to keep it all in the family and be there with my mother-in-law, take care of her just like the same. Thank you for listening to us, and I hope you approve our request. Thank you,
sir. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in favor or take care of this wonderful lady? Hearing none, is there anyone who is in opposition to the case? Seeing no one at this time, I close it to the public and I bring it to the commission. Commissioner Willie.
Oh, yeah, this is a case, I respect the request and move for approval.
Second.
So moved. Second by Commissioner Casabon. Commissioner Davis.
Yes, I actually went out to the location and saw the two mailboxes out front, and I measured, and it was determined you could actually put another one in the middle.
We have a motion by Commissioner Willie to approve, second by Commissioner Casabon. Please vote. Motion carries. You're very welcome. 2016-346-ZC, existing zoning, A1 Suburban District and Rural Overlay. Excuse me, proposed zoning, A2 Suburban District, Rural Overlay and Manufactured Housing Overlay. The parcel, 1 acre. The petitioner, Louis H. Bonneville. The owner, Louis H. Bonneville. The parcel is located on the northwest corner of Green Valley Road in Major Lane, south of Stewart Road, Ward 3, District 3. Staff?
The 2025 future land use plan calls for the area to be developed with residential and agricultural uses. Staff does not have any compelling reason to recommend approval of the requested zoning change, considering that the site is surrounded by residential uses and undeveloped land zoned A1 Suburban District. Staff does not have any objection to the requested zoning change to allow for a manufactured housing overlay. The staff recommends that the request for A2 Suburban District designation be denied and the request for the manufactured housing overlay be approved.
Thank you. Is the petitioner here? Please come to the podium, state your name and address.
My name is Louis Bonneville. I live at 76100 Green Valley Road for the past 26 years. In May, my home in Metairie burned down from a fire, and since then, my son and my granddaughter have been living with me. I request to put a mobile home on 1 acre of my 5.5 acre property. The surrounding area in a 2-block radius, they have 11 mobile homes. So I'm hoping that y'all will approve that I can put a mobile home for my son and my granddaughter.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in favor? Yes, sir. Please come to the podium, state your name and address.
Yes, sir. My name's Anthony Bonneville. I'm son, Louis Bonneville. I'm the one with the unfortunate house that burned down on the South Shore. But it's always been our desire, when we purchased this property over 20 years ago, to eventually move to the North Shore and develop a piece of property for myself as well. It's me and my daughter. We do have custody of my daughter, and she's also attending Folsom Junior High at this point. And I would just hope that you guys would allow us to develop it and put a manufactured home in that parcel.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you much.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in favor of the request? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition? Please, the gentleman right on the aisle.
Ladies and gentlemen of the commission, my name is Frank St. Philip. My current address is 76021 Green Valley Road. I'm the property that's actually adjacent to the proposed location. And I guess there's just a little confusion with us. The actual parcel is 5.5 acres. It already has one single-family residence there. What they're requesting to do is to put 2 single-family residences on the location, one being already a mobile home, and that is to put in a second mobile home. The existing property also has several accessory buildings on it, being stalls, multiple stalls and horse locations. So it runs a business, which is his business, his quarter horse business. It already has one residence and multiple accessory buildings. And to me, when we look at, and I heard the commission discuss earlier, Commissioner Manella, I apologize if I mispronounced that, but I understand that the responsibility of the commission is to uphold the policies and ordinances, or to ensure that the policies and the ordinances are followed. And when we look at A1, what is existing there without, and we agree with the staff's refusal or denial recommendation of the A2, when we look at A1 and the density, which is 1 residence per 5 acres, that what is there now is clearly within A1. To allow a second mobile home there is completely against that. And I guess lastly, and I understand that part of this rezoning is to rezone just 1 acre of it, and we have to go through multiple processes. But to me, if we start this down the road, is it going to stop? He made a misstatement, and I don't think he was trying to I guess, make an untruth, but, and he may have meant a 2-mile radius, but I assure you, within a 2-block radius, there are no other mobile homes. If not, if you extend that to maybe 3 and 4 blocks, there may be 2 mobile homes that are there, which were grandfathered in way back when the change was made. So I guess at this point, I do respectfully request that the commission deny the request for the mobile home overlay.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in opposition? Yes, sir.
My name is Tony Saragusa. I live at 13071 Major Lane. And I do not have any joy in speaking here tonight about this because Louis Bonneville is my immediate neighbor. But the thing is, like what Frank said, it's Zone A1, which is 1, residence per 5 acres, and it is a mobile home. And to put another one, it's, 2 trailers right on a corner, I mean, Louis keeps his place nice and all, but it's changing it from what it looks, everything is nice with how it is, A1. Let's see. And like Frank said, this opens the door for everybody else to start. So, I want my, family member, to move in here and start changing it. Next thing you know, everybody's doing it. So I move against it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Timothy Smith, live at 13194 Major Lane. I am one of the people that live in the mobile home. Not opposed to mobile homes, but when we bought this property in 1990, clearly stated that you could not put multiple mobiles on this property. That was one of the reasons we bought. Louis is a neighbor. Again, nothing personal, but it does start to change the appearance. Not necessarily with his son, but if it continues down the road, when you divide that property and you start putting mobile homes, the undesirables have been known to move in there. And that's my concern with a daughter, a son, and we already have riffraff that we don't need. So that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in opposition? Yes, sir. Please come to the podium.
And I apologize when I hesitated. The one other point I wanted to make is that, you know, I do think it's honorable that his son wants to move closer to his father, but I do believe in A1 that he can have a guest home. So if he wants to construct a guest home under 1,000 square feet, it's there. Again, so is there a compelling reason to allow a zoning change? I disagree. If the remedy is already available to you, you should at least look forward to that first. So again, I respectfully request the commission to deny the mobile home overlay.
Thank you, sir. Again, is there anyone else who wishes to speak in opposition? If not, 5 minutes of rebuttal. Yes, sir.
Number one, sir, Frank has to get his things right here. They have an area of 2.5 blocks. I've got pictures on my phone of 14 mobile homes. I don't have a business there. I have several horses for my children and myself. So none of that is true. So he needs to get his facts straight before he says anything. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else who wishes to speak for the case in rebuttal? Seeing none, I would ask if opposition would like to speak in rebuttal. Come to the podium, please.
Well, since my honesty has been questioned, you know, I too have a picture on my phone of the advertisement, but I'm not sure if that's evidence that can be submitted at this time, but of the quarter horse advertisement on his property. And as far as the mobile homes, I don't know if anyone else can hear who's here today. Everybody with their hands raised who's against it can stand and say that there's 14 mobile homes within a two-block radius of Louis' home. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Not at this time. I would close it to the public and bring it to the commission. Commissioner Lauren.
Thank you. One question to the staff. What good would it do us, understanding what the intent of what they're trying to do is, what good would it do to grant a mobile home overlay and deny the zoning change?
It would allow the owner to apply for a building permit to place a mobile home as a guest house, so the mobile home would have to be under 1,000 square feet.
Okay, so you understand that one now?
Yeah, Mr. Bonneville, do you understand what Commissioner Lauren has stated with that?
I understand, but I wasn't aware of that.
Okay, you could, if we pass it, if we leave it the zoning as it is and pass the mobile home overlay, then you could put a second trailer as a guest house, but it would have to be less than 1,000 square feet.
And I would like to bring up that the parcel will not, the owner will not be able to subdivide the property. He will have to remain owner of the entire 5-acre parcel and, you know, allow his son or you will have to apply for the building permit for a mobile home as a guest house if the zoning commission grants.
I just want to make sure he understands that.
Under 1,000 square feet.
Commissioner Willie?
Yeah, my biggest concern is actually the zoning. That area was developed as 5-acre minimum area, and it needs to stay that way. You know, whether you have to build a guest home or something, you know, under 1,000 square foot, that'd be up to you. But I'm going to move for denial on this.
I'll second it.
Motion by Commissioner Willie to deny, second by Commissioner Casabon. Commissioner Davis.
Yeah, I'd like to see Mr. Bonneville, the younger Mr. So your father currently lives in the manufactured home that's there now?
Yes, sir, it does.
Okay, and you intend on moving another manufactured home on this 1-acre parcel?
Yes, sir, I do.
Or around this area, 1-acre parcel?
Yes, sir.
Have you already purchased this?
No, but I was about to. It's only 1,100, I believe 1,135 square feet. You're talking 135 square feet difference.
Right.
I
But you understand about the zoning
I
issue?
do understand the zoning
Because-
issue.
because,
That's why we're here before you.
Right.
Because anything under 1,000 square feet is rather small.
But staff it is okay, as is now, they can buy another manufactured home as long as it's 1,000 square foot?
No, it would have to be a guest house, a single-family residence under 1,000 square feet.
Okay, so it can't be, okay. It can't be, okay.
Yeah, that's why when he said deny the mobile home overlay, is because the particular area has some mobile homes, but they have worked very hard to have the stick-built homes and the larger acres because of the type of land.
I move to deny both requests, the mobile home overlay
Yeah,
as well as the
and I second
rezoning.
And that's what I seconded.
We have a motion to deny by Commissioner Willie for both requests, second by Commissioner Casabon. Is there any further comments? And again, I would counsel the commission that a yes vote is a vote for denial. Please vote. The motion of denial carries. 2016-351-ZC. Existing zoning, A4 Single Family Residential District. Proposed zoning, ED1 Primary Education District. The parcel, .574 acres. The petitioner, Jeffrey D. Shane. The owner, St. Tammany Parish School District, W.L. Trey Foltz. Parcel is located in the northeast corner of North 5th Avenue and North 8th Street, being lots 10 through 14, Square 5, Alton, Ward 8, District 9. Staff?
The 2025 future land use plan calls for the area to be developed with residential uses. The zoning change is being requested in order to allow for the site to be developed with educational uses associated with the abutting Alton Elementary School. At this time, staff would like to recommend approval of the requested zoning change.
Thank you. Mr. Shane.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Honorable Commission. Jeff Shane of the Jones Fussell Law Firm in Covington at P.O. Box 1810, and I have the pleasure of representing the St. Tammany Parish School Board in connection with this matter. If you will look at the staff report on the Google image you have, you can see the 4 lots in question. They abut the east side of Alton Elementary School, which is in desperate need of more parking. The purchase of these lots was to give the school board opportunity to create a parking area. The house just to the north appears to be an abandoned home. There are no families, as you can see, that live in that immediate area. So we appreciate the staff recommendation that despite the fact there's a good bit of residential in the area, it's undeveloped. And I think actually creating the parking opportunity for the school will reduce congestion of vehicles that currently have to stack and/or park in the public right-of-ways around the school. So we respectfully request that you recommend the council to rezone this parcel ED1.
Thank you, Mr. Shane. Is there anyone else in the public who wishes to speak in favor? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition? Seeing none, I close it to the public, bring it to the commission. Commissioner Davis.
Yeah, Mr. Shane? Yeah, I don't have a problem rezoning this to ED1. I think that's a good use, especially for a parking area. One note to inform you about that abandoned home in the rear, okay? There's also an abandoned home right in your property as well. It's hidden. Be careful.
So noted.
Make a motion to change the zoning from A4 to ED1.
So moved. Second by Commissioner Richardson. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Commissioner Lauren.
Mr. Shane, could I ask one question real quick?
Yes, sir.
As you well know, I was at that ball game with you Saturday,
Yes.
and I was hollering, so my throat's sore, and I don't have any business talking as much as I'm doing tonight. But I've got one question. If we grant this change, would that allow that parking place in the future to be used as classrooms if they ever so choose to do so?
Yes, sir, it would, assuming the proper setbacks, buffers, and other requirements of code are met.
My concern is it would put that parcel across the street, across Fifth Street or whatever it is, from the main campus. And where that exists over at Madisonville Elementary, it's necessary for them to put roadblocks during the school hours across the road and block off the street, which causes all kind of problems. So I just want to make sure I know what I'm voting on. Okay.
Yes, sir. May I comment to that?
Yes, sir.
Please.
Yes, sir. Well, I think, have you been to the Alton facility? The Alton Elementary School is located on both sides of Fifth Street, north and south.
Okay.
And currently, during drop and pickup times, I guess I'll call it the loop road. I guess it would help if I put my glasses on. 8th Street is a northerly one-way, and it loops around the campus and comes back to the south.
Okay.
So that the reason the loop is created in that manner is that it does not go in front of any residences that are active. And so, I mean, your point's well taken, because I think you and I have discussed before, in fact, the traffic issues at the other school. In this particular instance, we should not have that consequence of concern. Again, now this will actually be for off-site parking. That is what the current proposal is. But certainly, I mean, in the future, if and when the school grows, there could be an improvement there as well. But I don't think it will create the issue that you foresee. And my throat's just as sore as yours.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions of the commission? If not, we have a motion by Commissioner Davis to approve, second by Commissioner Richardson. Please vote. Motion carries. 2016-352-ZC. Existing zoning, A2 Suburban District. Proposed zoning, A4 Single Family Residential District. The parcel, 16.77 acres. The petitioner, Jim Lark. The owner, Lauren B. Hart. Parcel located on the south side of Brewster Road, east of Dummy Line Road, west of Chafunkta Park Drive, Ward 1, District 4. Staff?
The 2025 future land use plan calls for the area to be developed with residential uses. Although there are some existing residential subdivisions zoned A4 in close proximity, Three Rivers Heights across the site and Fairfield Oaks to the west, staff does not see any compelling reason to recommend approval of the requested zoning change, considering that the site is abutting undeveloped land on the south and west sides and a residential subdivision, Tchefuncte Park to the east, also zoned A2. The staff recommends that the request for a A4 single-family residential district be denied.
Thank you. Mr. Marone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Paul Marone on behalf of the petitioner this evening, Mr. Jim Lark. The tract before you is a relatively small 16-acre parcel located along the south side of Brewster near the intersection of Dummy Line. And we would respectfully disagree with the conclusion of the staff report on this particular request. As you can see, we're requesting an A4 zoning for a single-family residential subdivision. We're only seeking 23 lots out of this tract, which is about a 1.38 unit per acre density. Unfortunately, we can't achieve that density or those lots under the A3 zoning because of the 100-foot frontage requirement, as well as some drainage and wetlands features along the east side of the property that we'd like to preserve. So in trying to determine the best vehicle for the development, we also looked at a PUD, thinking that perhaps an A3 with a PUD, we could achieve what we needed to. We could get rid of the 100-foot front requirement and preserve those wetlands. However, as you might imagine, a PUD on 16 acres is not exactly viable. While it does provide some alternatives, it really is very difficult to meet the amenities needed, the variety of housing that's required. So for these reasons, the PUD really didn't make sense for this particular property, which brings us back to our A4. And I would respectfully suggest to you that there are some compelling factors that would lead you to conclude that an A4 would be permissible and even compatible with this site. I asked Ms. Lambert to pass around for you a blow-up of the zoning map surrounding the property. And if you'll look at that map, I've highlighted the A4 that is in the area. As the staff noted, we have A4 immediately across the highway from us, which is the Three River Heights development, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a moment. Also, just to our west, we have Fairfield Oaks. But in addition to the other A4s in the area, you will also need to look at the PUDs that surround us, because those PUDs, Springhaven, LaBois, Autumn Creek, and Ruelle de Chine, all have densities that would be consistent with an underlying A4 zoning. Finally, I would also point out to you that Three River Heights across Brewster Road, while it is zoned A4, is an older, large subdivision that is primarily comprised of 60-foot lots. So the zoning at A4, it is built out more as an A4A. So if you look at the surrounding developments and taking into consideration what is immediately across Brewster Road from us, we would respectfully suggest to you that A4 in this location would be compatible. The zoning map indicates that what you have here is you have a mix of zoning in this area. But given the relatively small size of this parcel, which is only 16 acres, the other A4 and then the PUDs with densities that are consistent with an A4 in such close proximity, particularly with Three Rivers, which is immediately across the highway, we would suggest that A4 is appropriate. I would also point out, and I think it's important to note, that my client this evening, Mr. Lark, lives immediately next door in Tchefuncte Park. He's resided in this area for some time. He has a vested interest in what happens on this particular piece of property. It is for that reason that he reached out to purchase the property, because he wanted to have some control or say in what is built there, since he and his neighbors are immediately next door to it. But for these reasons, particularly the mix of zoning that is in the area, the A4 and the PUDs, I would respectfully submit to you that for a 16-acre parcel, A4 would be appropriate, and we would respectfully request to your consideration and a positive recommendation to you, to the council, upon our request.
Thank you, Mr. Marone. Is there anyone else in the public who wishes to speak in favor of the case? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to this case? Seeing none, I close it to the public and I bring it to the commission. Commissioner Lauren.
I make a motion to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Lauren to approve. Commissioner Fitzmaurice.
I have a question for Paul. How many lots did you say are being considered?
23?
23.
Yes.
I'll second the motion.
Second by Commissioner Fitzmaurice. Commissioner Lauren, any further
No,
comments?
I'm sorry.
We have a motion by Commissioner Lauren to approve, second by Commissioner Fitzmaurice. Please vote. Motion carries. 2016-353-ZC, existing zoning A1 Suburban District. Proposed zoning A2 Suburban District. The parcel, 2 acres. The petitioner, Coleman Nave. The owner, Glenn and Chris Nave. The parcel is located on the north side of Teresa Nave Road, west of Louisiana Highway 25, Ward 2, District 3. Staff.
The 2025 future land use plan calls for the area to be developed residential and agricultural. Staff does not see any compelling reason to recommend approval of the request, considering that the site is surrounded by residential uses and undeveloped land zoned A1. The staff recommends that the request for A2 Suburban District be denied.
Thank you. Is the petitioner here? If you come to the podium, state your name and address.
My name is Coleman Nave. I live at 13231 Teresa Nave Road. I am requesting that the council rezone from A1 to A2. I am looking to build a single-family residence on that 2 acres of land that my parents are going to deed to me, and that is what we're trying to achieve here on family land.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else in the public who wishes to speak in favor?
I am Chris Nave, and I live at 13231 Teresa Nave Road. And I have 2 sons. They're going to get this whole tract of land. And right now, I just would like to just deed him 2, so that in case they're young, if they ever had to sell it, I don't want to lose all 5. Just 2 is all I would want to lose. So I'd appreciate that if you'd take that into consideration. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in favor? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition? Seeing none, I close to the public and I bring it to the commission. Commissioner Willie.
Yeah, I'm real familiar with this one. They own 20-some acres there, and you just want to give 2. I move for approval.
Motion by Commissioner Willie to approve, second by Commissioner Casabon. Commissioner Davis.
Miss Nave, can you come to the podium? You say you have 2 sons,
Yes.
and you want to give one of your sons 2 acres now.
Mm-hmm.
But in the end, obviously, it's going to be split between them, probably, right?
Yes.
Is there a reason you don't give them 3 acres? We can move it to A1A and we're done? I'm just kidding.
Oh, okay.
Commissioner Davis probably did have a point in that, though.
Too many Diet Cokes, I'm sorry.
We have a motion by Commissioner Willie to approve, second by Commissioner Casabon. Please vote. Motion carries.
And no dinner.
No dinner. 2016-355-ZC, existing zoning, A1 Suburban District. Proposed zoning, A3 Suburban District. The parcel, 82.759 acres. The petitioner, Toby Easterly. The owner, the Marietta Trust. Parcels located on the south side of U.S. Highway 190, west of Louisiana Highway 1077, Ward 1, District 3. Staff?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to request to hear 2016-355 and 2016-357 together, if possible, considering it is for the same parcel.
Certainly. I'll read 357. 2016-357-ZC, existing zoning, A1 Suburban District, proposed zoning, A3 Suburban District, and planned unit development overlay. The parcel, 82.759 acres. The petitioner, Toby Easterly. The owner, the Marietta Trust. The parcel is located on the south side of U.S. Highway 190, west of Louisiana Highway 1077, Ward 1, District 3. Staff?
The petitioner is requesting to change the zoning of an 82.759 acre parcel of land from A1 to A3 Suburban District to establish the underlying zoning and also to plan unit development overlay to develop the site as a 165-unit single-family residential subdivision. The size of the lot will vary from 50, 60, and 70 feet in width. At this time, the property is proposed to be accessed from two separate driveways from Highway 190, and eventually a third driveway will also have to be required to provide access to lot 165, which is not accessed from inside of the subdivision. At this time, staff would like to recommend approval of the request to rezone the property to A3 and also to plan unit development overlay.
Thank you. Mr. Marone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Paul Marone on behalf of the petitioner, Mr. Easterly. This particular tract of land, which is 82.7 acres, is located west of Goodby along Highway 190, actually on the south side of the highway, currently zoned A1. Our proposal is for an underlying zoning of A3 with a PUD overlay. In regards to the underlying zoning, I would note for you that immediately to the east of this property, we abut A3, which is the zoning that we seek for this parcel. Immediately across Highway 190, we are fronting NC5 and NC2, so we have across the highway neighborhood commercial zones. We are also adjacent to catty corner to, if you will, on the other side of Highway 190 from the countryside PUD, which has densities greater than what we're proposing under our A3 zone. As for the PUD plan, we have 165 lots, which is 2 lots to the acre, or a density of a half acre. As Ms. Lambert noted, we have housing with lot sizes 50 feet wide, 60 feet wide, and 70 feet wide. We're proposing 44.4 acres of green space on the site. That is 49% of the site, giving only half credit for the green space that's going to be used for the retention ponds. So we have extensive green space that will be maintained in that capacity in perpetuity. We are also taking great care to try and avoid the wetlands on site. You'll notice on your site plan we have identified those wetlands. We have tried to cluster the development as much as possible within the non-wet areas. There is some intrusions, but it is minimal, and the design is based largely to try to leave those wetlands areas undisturbed. We've also worked with your planning staff and with engineering on our lot layout in an effort to address some of the issues that we tend to face when we come back to you in the planning stage. That was instituted by your staff as a way to try to head off some issues that we have had recently. Issues such as block lengths, the driveway setbacks that we've addressed so much recently, as well as the general pond locations. So the plan before you has undergone some changes as a part of that process. We also have the amenities on site that are required with any PUD. You'll see that we propose a playground, half-court basketball court, a pavilion with electricity and working bathrooms, and a hard soft surface walking path around the amenity area. We've also tried to have the lots laid out in a manner where we leave some gaps to encourage pedestrian access to the green spaces. You'll notice that there will be a row of blocks and then a small green space area. That is there for the sole purpose of inviting access and interaction between pedestrians and those green space areas. In regards to utilities, obviously we will have central utilities. You'll notice that we propose an on-site location for utilities. We have been in discussions with the parish's utility company about the possibility of them relocating one of their sub-regional facilities to this location. They believe that this is a better location than the existing site. So we are happy to accommodate that. In the event that Tammany Utilities decides that they don't want to relocate, then we're happy to tie into that existing site. But in any event, we will have utilities, central utility systems, sewer and water, available for this particular development. So in conclusion, the A3 underlying zoning we would respectfully submit is reasonable and compatible with the other zoning that is adjacent to our east and across the street from us. The half-acre density is, in our estimation, modest and reasonable, and the PUD plan meets all of your requirements and maintains 44 acres of green space in perpetuity. So we would respectfully request your concurrence with the staff's recommendation and approval of our underlying zoning of A3 and our PUD overlay as presented to you in the plan that it's in your packet. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Moran. Is there anyone else in the public who wishes to speak in favor of this? Is there anyone in the public who wishes to speak in opposition? Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Joan Cox. I live at 349 Beebalm Circle. I am part of the Homeowners Association for Countryside Gardens, which is catty corner across the street. And while I'm not opposed, and I think the plan sounds wonderful, we have concerns because of all the flooding that has happened over the last several months, and we want to be very cautious about any new development in the area. I realize it is across 190, but if drainage isn't done properly, and I realize this, I learned a lot tonight by being here from all the prior issues that came up, so I'm sure that I need to address planning as well. But what we're asking for is it be postponed, not necessarily denied, but postponed until I know there are plans by our parish council person and others to do some studies in the area, because we're just concerned that if drainage south of us isn't done right, then it blocks up everything to the north as well. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in opposition or make a comment? Seeing none, Mr. Marone, care to rebut?
Thank you. Just briefly, obviously we appreciate and empathize with Ms. Cox's drainage concerns, in particular with some of the catastrophic impacts that we've seen, not just in this area, but particularly to our west, Tangipahoa Parish and beyond recently. All I would say is, as we've heard tonight in other cases, drainage will be paramount at another step in this process. I mentioned earlier that we have had some preliminary meetings with the engineers at the parish. We are attuned to those issues, and we are confident that we can address those appropriately so that this property does not become a source of concern for our friends to the north and countryside or to any of the developments to the south. But we would respectfully request your approval to move through this zoning phase this evening so that we can get to the point of having the hydrological study done and the other details so that we can answer those drainage concerns not only to the residents but to you in greater detail as we move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Moran. Ms. Cox, do you care to make any further comment? Thank you. At this time, we close it to the public, bring it to the commission. Commissioner Willie.
Yeah, I agree with Paul. I move for approval.
Now, just for clarification, there are two cases. We will vote on those cases separately. So currently, we're going to address and vote on 2016-355-ZC.
Okay, as land use, I move for approval.
Motion by Commissioner Willie to approve.
I'll second that from A1 to A3.
A1 to A3, second by Commissioner Davis. Is there any further discussion? Please vote. Motion carries. We will now discuss 2016-357-ZC. I'll address any comments or questions from the commission. Commissioner Davis.
Paul?
Yes.
Looking at this preliminary PUD overlay that you've given me, I'm not crazy about it at all. I mean, I'm gonna make a recommendation for a PUD overlay, but when you come back to planning, just as courteous, it better not be this one. All the lots look the same to me. There's no diversity in it at all. And I mean, one of the requirements for a PUD is to have diverse lot structure, and this does not look like it has it at all. I'm a little concerned about that, is all I'm saying.
Understood.
So when you come back, and I see you have a tremendous lot of detention ponds in here as well, and I can see that's going to be needed, obviously, because and some of the lots that you have, you're building, they will have to be mitigated, correct?
There are some that will need to have some mitigation, yes.
Yeah.
There are some crossings, and there are some of the lots where there is a slight encroachment.
Right. So I'll make a motion for a PUD, to approve a PUD overlay, but again, you may want to consider changing this up pretty good for us.
I second that with reservations as well.
We have a motion by Commissioner Davis with the qualification of hopefully and a change in front of the Planning Commission, second by Commissioner Willie. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion carries. ZC 04-04-032, proposed zoning, major amendment to the Plan Unit Development Overlay. Parcel 32 acres, the petitioner Penn Mill Place LLC, the owner Penn Mill Place LLC. The parcel is located on the west side of Penn Mill Road, north of US Highway 190, Ward 3, District 3. Staff?
The petitioner is requesting a major amendment to the PUD, which consists of a modification of the rear and front setback requirements. The objective of the request is to allow for a particular housing size and style to be built on the lot. Staff does not have any objection to the request and would like to recommend approval.
Thank you. Mr. Morad.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Paul Marone again, this time on behalf of Penn Mill Place. Just briefly, as staff noted, we're looking to modify the front and rear setbacks slightly, changing a 3-foot variation on the front and a 5-foot variation on the back in order to accommodate some larger housing types that we would envision having here. I would point out to you that there are no homes in the development yet, so we're not changing the plans or the locations midstream. We are ahead of that. And so this would be, we hope to have these setbacks in place when the first lots are sold and the homes are constructed upon them. So we would respectfully request your approval for the major amendment to make those variations to the setbacks.
Thank you, Mr. Morone. Is there anyone else in the public who wishes to speak in favor? Anyone who wishes to speak in opposition? Seeing none, I close it to the public and I bring it to the commission. Commissioner Willie.
Paul, I don't have a problem with this, the request. That wouldn't change the number of lots created.
No.
Okay, I'll move for approval.
Motion by Commissioner Willie to approve. Commissioner Casabon.
How many lots are we talking about? All of them? Or
Yes,
on that back
the
side?
setbacks would apply to all of the lots.
On,
And I don't recall, looks like there are 58 lots total.
I'll make a motion, I'll second it.
Second by Commissioner Casabon. Any further? Commissioner Davis?
Yes, this is pretty easy. If you look at it, most of the lots are actually backed up to the green space, it looks like.
Correct.
And it looks like it really only influences the lots from 1 through 18 on Amber Street that back up to another portion of that.
That's
So that's really the only,
Potential point of conflict at all. That's
right, thank you.
correct. That's correct.
Any further comments? Commissioner Richard, did you have a comment? We have a motion by Commissioner Willie to approve, second by Commissioner Casabon. Please vote. Motion carries. ZC 12-08-076, proposed zoning, a major amendment to a planned unit development overlay. The parcel, 14.6 acres. The petitioner, Paul Marone. The owner, the Garden Walk LLC. The parcel is located in the north of Emerald Forest Boulevard, east of Falconer Drive, Ward 3, District 5. Staff?
Petitioner is requesting a major amendment to the PUD, and the request consists of the removal of a residential lot, Lot 25, to provide additional green space, a swimming pool, a cabana, and a parking area for the amenities. Staff does not have any objection to the request and would like to recommend approval.
Thank you. Mr. Marone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One last time, Paul Marone, this time on behalf of the Garden Walk LLC. This is a relatively new development, and there are a few homes constructed in the development now, and there's a request by some of those that have bought in the development and also some of those that are looking for some additional amenities. As a result, my client has agreed to add those amenities. In order to facilitate that, we need to amend the PUD. Again, we're looking to drop one of the lots, replace that with a pool and cabana and parking area. So fewer lots, more amenities, more green space. What more can we do for you? We'd ask for your approval.
Thank you, Mr. Marone. Is there anyone else in the public who wishes to speak in favor of this case? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition? Seeing none, I close it to the public and I bring it to the commission. Commissioner Fitzmaurice.
I'm going to make a motion to approve. It's pretty rare when you get a developer willing to take a lot out and put some amenities in, so I'll commend him for that.
We have a motion by Commissioner Fitzmaurice, second by Commissioner Richard. Any further comments? Again, we have a motion by Commissioner Fitzmaurice to approve, second by Commissioner Richard. Please vote. Motion carries. Conditional use permit request cases. Applications requiring review and approval of the use by the Zoning Commission before issuance of a permit are as follows. CP 07-06-096PR. Use, commercial building, variance request. Zoning, HC2 Highway Commercial District. Use size, 5,477 square feet. The petitioner, Duplantis Design Group, Thomas Buckle. The owner, 3Z's Building Company, LLC. The parcel is located on the west side of Louisiana Highway 21, North Ochsner Boulevard, Ward 1, District 1. Staff?
This case was in front of you a few months ago when the petitioner or the owner requested a couple of variances to place the dumpster inside of the green space to allow for more room for the drive-through and also to allow for the location of the driveway off of Highway 21. After reviewing the proposed plan and in order to keep some existing trees on the site, the owner is requesting to reduce the number of trees within the front green space along Highway 21. As I just previously said, the owner is trying to preserve as many trees as possible. And the proposed number of trees would be adequate. It would be, allow the existing trees to properly grow, and staff would has no objection to the request. It was reviewed by our landscape architect on our staff, and she is in favor of this request and would like to recommend approval.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
My name is Tommy Buckle with Duplantis Design Group. I'm here on behalf of Roy Zapardo in 3Z's building development. As staff indicated, basically our landscape architect kind of worked with staff's landscape architect and said there's too many trees required and not enough room available to put them all, so this is the proposed solution where we are. So if there's any questions
you
you
did
have.
work cooperatively with staff's architect as well?
Yes, we did. Yes, we did.
Is there anyone else in the public who's in favor of the request? Is there anyone who's in opposition to the request? Seeing none, I close it to the public and I bring it to the commission. Commissioner Lauren.
Yes. Highway 21 is very sacred to me, in that we've got a planned corridor overlay on it. And if you look just south of that area, at the corner of Oshner, right down in that area, there's a McDonald's there.
Yes, sir.
And they wanted to encroach out further into towards the highway with an expansion. And my only assurance I'm asking of you is that we're just talking about landscaping. We're not talking about anything being built.
No, sir. We're complying with all the setback requirements. This is just physically the number of trees per code that's required on this piece, and we have a substantial amount of trees that are out there that are existing. And they said if we plant trees underneath other trees, they don't make it.
As
So
long as we don't encroach in the.
yes, sir.
in the
Understood.
For the public record, Commissioner Lauren is the keeper of the Highway 21 corridor. He may look like a southern gentleman, but don't cross him.
When McDonald's came in and asked, if you're familiar with that area.
Absolutely.
Okay, McDonald's restaurant is in the rear of the store, and they wanted to expand the store. So the only way to expand it would be to go forward, and to go forward meant going out into the setback. And they said, if you don't let us do it, we're gonna have to close down the McDonald's. And we said, well, bye-bye. We wouldn't let them in. And what I'm saying is, if we don't let one in, it wouldn't be fair to let someone else in.
Sure, understood.
And for that reason, I try to watch very carefully.
And you do a great job at that.
Thank you.
Would you care to make a motion on this, or? Motion by Commissioner Lauren to approve, second by Commissioner Dougherty. Any further comments? Please vote. Motion carries. Any old business to come before the commission? Any new business to come before the commission? I have a motion to adjourn.